and welcome to Novel Not New, a True End podcast. We're a narrative gaming book club podcast where we focus on story-heavy video games and discuss them each month like a book club. I'm your host, Jennifer, and joining me as always, Six.
Hello. Hi.
And our special guest for this month is Fen, who you may know from Fate Moon Archive.
Hi, I'm happy to be here. It was a treat getting to read this game early.
Yeah, I kind of skipped the order that y'all had going for that podcast a little.
How long is it going to be till you get to this?
1 sec. Let me pull up our schedule and, it is, Mahoyo is, whenever this page loads. So we are currently at number 11 on our list, and Mahoyo is number 38.
Oh, okay.
So it is going to be a while.
Yeah. But that 11 isn't like, it's not 38 games. You're like breaking it down to like roots and stuff? Or...
No, that is, so the Karno Kyokai episode or movies are each their own thing. Those are each going to be like one episode, but actually a lot of stuff between here and there is going to be one episode. But there's stuff like the Melty Blood manga, which has ran for 6 years, and so that's probably going to take a bit. Zero is going to take several episodes, so I don't know. Probably, sure. I would estimate a couple of years.
Yeah, fair enough.
Yeah, because with Zero, you're going to be doing like the book, the show, all of that all together in like different episodes, right?
Yeah, we're going to read the light novels alongside watching the anime.
Oh, okay.
Which should be fun. I no idea how many episodes we're going to do per 2 weeks. We'll cross that bridge when we get to
it. Yeah. And then there's the fun episodes y'all occasionally do where you like have something like Caligula Effect 2, and it's like, we got to talk about this. And that's still one of my favorite podcast episodes I've heard, honestly. Like, it was such a blast to hear y'all talk about it.
That is, I think our Fate Stay Night wrap-up episode is probably my favorite Fate episode, partially because we had friend of our pod, Lauren, on, and she is just incredibly smart and insightful. But also, I think it was just a really good, like, Fate episode, but Caligula Effect is, I think, probably still my favorite like podcast episode because of all the music that we added, and it was just like a real joy to go through that game.
Yeah. Anyway, before we jump into the game itself, I like to ask folks what stories they've been getting into recently. It can be a visual novel, it can be a book or a movie or anything, really. So,
I have been working a lot, right? Which has not left as much time as I would like for playing games. Not much. I was gonna say, or for like watching movies and stuff. Truthfully, it hasn't left much time for that, but I don't mind that as much because I just don't do that much anyway. But what I do end up doing is I end up listening to a lot of podcasts while I'm working, and I took the opportunity to finally power through and finish the Friends at the Table season, Partisan. Was their last one. They're currently starting up the next one now.
Oh, okay. How was that?
It was good. I think there are things that I think if you are a person who's interested in listening to Friends of the Table, I am not going to recommend you start here. I can offer some Basically, you should listen to the Marielda season they did. I think one of the things for me about Friends of the Table is that there's a lot of production involved. There's a lot of world building and a lot of lore to keep track of, and I think sometimes they get a little too in their own weeds about it, right? They get kind of like caught up in their own world building and kind of forget. I don't know. It's not like they forget anything. Like they're. I feel like they forget that they're talking to an audience sometimes. But I think Partisan overall was a really good season. And I think it ended on kind of a unsatisfying note for me, but like in a way that's just like, there was like storyline creep, right? Like the thing about tabletop games, even when you are professionals playing it, for an audience, is they just kind of go. And I think ending them is especially hard. Because you can't plan in advance the way you can for most stories. I mean, you can do some, but most, if you're doing a good job, you are allowing people to improvise to a certain degree and make changes on the fly and having to roll with roles, if you will. And so I think after how many episodes is it? I did the math at one point because they're starting up their next season now, as I say. And I did the math on like how many hours of podcast you'd have to listen to be ready for. Okay, here it is. So they're starting up their season called Palisade, which is a direct sequel to Partisan.
Mm-hmm.
And Austin Walker, who runs it, he's the GM, has said that you are expected to have listened to all of the Road to Partisan, which is their sort of wind up world building stuff, and then Partisan, and then all of the Road to Partisan. At the time when I did that math, there have been more released since, but at the time that I did that math, that is almost a solid 8 days of nonstop listening.
Oh, jeez. Okay.
That's so
which
much.
is too much. It's too much. And like, I do get it, right? But I feel like at that point, you can't make your next season a sequel that requires you to have listened to all the last stuff, right? It's like the Road to Partisan is about 23 hours. Partisan itself is about 5 days. And then the Road to Palisade is, when I checked at that time, it was about 2 days of listening. That's just, in other words, 48 hours. And I think that's kind of summing up the big problem to me with Friends of the Table, a show that I like a lot, but also very often I take so many breaks from Friends of the Table. And when I come back, I very often am like, I'm not even going to bother picking up where I left off. Because they just don't stop and they don't like restrain themselves ever. And there are merits to that, but I also find it really frustrating. Anyway, they're doing mecha stuff and mecha stuff's cool. So,
Hell yeah.
I will say, what was their last season? Sanfiel is a great jumping on point as well if you want like an entirely new world, entirely new characters. And I think the first half of that season is really good about being extremely episodic stories. Which is like then it very much feels like Austin and co can't help themselves but then turn it into a grand narrative. But I think I really enjoyed the first half of Sanfiel, especially. I think I like the season as a whole, but for just being like, oh yeah, cool, different group this week. I don't need to remember like details about what happened 4 weeks ago. I can just which is that I share your complaint about. I like Friends of the Table a whole lot. They also I think the worst offender for this was Winter in Hieron, where a character who had basically all of their characterization was through episode descriptions showed up, and you were supposed to have read those episode descriptions, or what happened made zero sense.
Oh no.
I kind of I hear why you think that one was the worst in that way. I'm not sure I disagree. I would put up, however, Twilight Mirage as another contender for that, which had some really cool ideas, but it was just like, what if we did our world building completely unmoored from everything and also did a lot of it off the air and you just didn't know what the fuck we were talking about?
Yeah.
Like, yeah, I feel bad because I don't want, like, I do really like Friends at the Table, right? But I feel like it is like eating like a really, really rich chocolate dessert.
Mm-hmm.
I so often am like, this is just too fucking dense. I just can't do this. And it's not like, I don't think it's bad, but I think it's like, yeah, it's like, it's too dense at times. It's doesn't show restraint in ways I feel like it should. And I feel bad that I'm spending this segment, like, kind of sounds like I'm shit talking them. I really like it. I think, like, of actual play stuff, I bounce off of almost everything. I think Marielda might be the single best, just like, listen to a season of an actual play show that exists.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I really like Counterweight as well. The only reason I don't recommend Counterweight as readily is I feel like a lot of Friends of the Table seasons have a rough beginning where they are sort of getting a feel for things, and I think Counterweight falls prey to that, which makes me surprised that Songfiel is kind of the other way. Songfiel, I think I ended up not... I listened to some, but I ended up not getting into it just because it's like Southern American gothic horror, and I just am not here for that, so...
Mm-hmm.
But it seemed like they were doing cool shit. Yeah. They're all really talented folks, and they're really smart, and I respect their work a lot. And yeah, maybe you should just don't make it people listen to 8 days of podcasts to be able to listen to your new show. Don't do that.
It's always tough whenever I take a break from podcasts just because it feels so daunting to catch up where the show is actually at now. But that in particular, when it doesn't even give you the option of potentially skipping, it's just like, okay, you should really be listening to all of it before you get back here. That sounds pretty daunting.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. I can go. I have a plethora of things to talk about. Real quick shout out to Girls Last Tour. That is for Fate Moon Archive, we have a section at the beginning that is more or less inspired by like this and GGP doing Great Gundam Project doing hey, what anime have you watched? And it turned from that into a second book club at some point. This was not our intention, but we read all of Girls Last Tour, and I know that y'all covered the first 3 episodes of the anime. I don't like the anime a whole lot. The manga is the best manga I've ever read.
今日はもう聞き返そうかな明日はもっといけかなきしむ見つけたいトーク嬉しいを多くキラリ光るホープ動く取り留めないトーク
So I would highly recommend it. I love Tsukumizu's art style. It's like a very sketchy. The characters are extremely just moe blobs, but the backgrounds are so deliciously detailed and intricate that it's a really fun and interesting. Or I would not call the content fun and interesting. I would call the content extremely melancholy. It is a story about like finding meaning in life and finding meaning in life, especially when there's kind of no extrinsic things to give your life meaning, because the world has ended, and Chi and Yu are 2 of the last people on Earth. or it certainly seems like that. But just like really incredible. I'm a person who cares a lot about how stories wrap up, and it has one of the best endings of anything I've ever read. Just like perfectly wraps up all of the themes of the manga in a like beautifully told ending.
They go down a different road that they've never been down before, and they're like, oh, there's a whole Studio Ghibli town. Everyone's fine. We just didn't notice.
Yeah. I would like to additionally, and then I will talk about games in a sec. The other story I'd love to talk about is Yamano Susume. Which is an anime that is, or a manga first. The anime is notable for being kind of a showcase for animation quality. And the reason I bring it up here is that it is not the show that convinced me that you can tell stories, like that you can express story through animation. I think I might call out Akebi-chan's Sailor uniform for that, but it is just like truly gorgeous animation that complements a kind of much like Bocchi the Rock this season, or Super Cub. That was sometime this year, I think. It is a slice of life hobby anime about mountain climbing, and the protagonist Aoi is not. She is kind of a loner at the beginning and makes friends, but is still fundamentally kind of a person who likes spending time alone, and she gets really bitter sometimes, and it is just a lot of fun seeing a like slice of life protagonist who has actual emotions, and yeah, again, the way it is animated, I think if you pay attention to that stuff at all, it is it is a series that has just allowed a bunch of fans of the series to work on it and kind of turned them free to do what they wish, which is just ends up in a absolute joy. If you don't watch anything else, just watch the first like 3 minutes of Next Summit is the most recent, and it seems like final season. But the first 3 minutes of episode 1 of that are just like a showcase in how animating someone can tell an entire story. There's a bit where just Aoi bends down to, or like squats down to look at bookshelves, and the way that she brushes her skirt is just like absolutely incredible. Okay. I have also been making my way through Blue Reflection 2 on New Game Plus. That is a hell of a game. Great RPG. Just incredible. I think I'd taken a break. I played it through with my partner, Ben, and then took a little bit of a break, and then started a New Game Plus run, and then between moving and getting really busy with work and the other podcast I do, I put it on hold for a while and just got back to it because I was like, I really want to talk about this on Novel Not New when we do this section. And damn, it's an incredible game. The overarching plot goes interesting places. I guess real quick, Blue Reflection 2 is the second game, third entry in the series, in the Blue Reflection series. The first game does the JRPG plot pretty well. You kill God at the end. And then there's an anime, Blue Reflection Ray, which is somehow 2 cores. I have no idea how they got 24 episodes out of that. And it is poorly paced and very clearly it does not look good. I like how it looks, but that is it is partially in spite of how it looks. But the anime is interesting because it kind of says, okay, you killed God at the end of the first game. That had an impact on the world and really screwed things up.
I can imagine, yeah.
And so yeah, the anime like deals with that in really interesting ways, and I think like digs into some of the thematic stuff that the first game touches on but doesn't really go deep into. And then the second game is post the anime. Bad things happened at the end of the anime. And so the second game is a bunch of girls or I think 4 girls are trapped on an island in a never-ending summer.
Oh, great. Okay. Well, then at least it turned out happy for them.
Yeah, and then slowly they start like more girls start showing up as the people who are
fantastic.
Already on the island kind of remember their connections there. And I already know where it's going, and there's a lot of like fun. Yeah, it is a story that is designed to be played a second time, so that you pick up on kind of the early stuff that is foreshadowing future things, or like, yeah, there are fun nods to the story itself is kind of cyclical. And I know that there is a better ending at the end of New Game Plus, and so I'm excited to get there. But the anime is the second core of the anime in particular. The first core is like poorly paced, I would say. It opens like throwing like 7 characters at you and asks you to remember all of their names. And then the second core is like really incredible, and then it is, yeah, I think Blue Reflection 2 is one of my favorite RPGs of all time, because of the ways where it goes, and because of how wonderful the connections are that the protagonist makes with everyone else. It's a truly just a joy of a game.
Yeah, that sounds really cool. I've seen a few other friends as well talk about how much they enjoyed the game, and it sounds like you do get more from it if you've seen the first game and the anime before it, but it also sounds like you can jump into the second one and you'll be mostly okay.
Yes, I like can't overstate how much the anime came out of left field, and like Ben and I were like, okay, yeah, I guess we'll watch this because it might get referenced by the second game. And then it has one of our favorite characters, certainly in the series, just generally a favorite character, Kamigawa Uta, who really just goes places, both in the anime and in the second game. The anime is incredible, and then yes, but yeah, if you don't have time for the first game, I would say if you don't have time for the first game, maybe look up the boss fights, because they're really incredible. It is like classical dubstep is how I would describe the music in the boss fights. Like, an orchestra with drops. And that the connections that you make the party in one is set to 3 people, the protagonist, and 2 strange girls named Yuzu and Lime, who are, I think, the only 2 to have appeared in every entry in the series. But right. You make connections with a bunch of other girls, and you can call them in during combat. And some of them are like, oh yeah, she's the tennis girl, so she when you call her in for support, she bats a ball at the enemy. And others are like just truly incredible and have to be seen. Yeah. The boss fights are the one thing I really miss from the first game, because I think that they're like really incredible.
I played some of it when it first came out, and I meant to get back to it, and I haven't, but I should. The first one, that is. Which, by the way, the first one was announced as the final game in the developer Gust's Beautiful Girls Festival, which I just felt like we should all know.
That's the first game. I should say the second game can also be horny, but is way better about it. The first game is unabashedly horny. I've said before that the first game feels like a game made with about $5, and 2 of those were spent on wet t-shirt tack. So that gives you an idea of where their priorities were. But the writing is also really good.
You have people may have seen, I feel like in our circles it did, I'm not willing to call it a meme, but it's one of the things that did the rounds, which was the protagonist lying on a bed reading about Crunch on her phone.
Yeah, there's an interesting social link in that game around Crunch. I have one more thing, if that's okay.
Yeah, go ahead.
I started playing Blue Archive. It is
not a story game.
Well, okay. So
it's a story game. It has story in it.
It doesn't tell you what the fucking story is. The basic premise is never explained for the fucking world and characters.
That is okay. I will say that is part of the joy of experiencing Blue Archive. Both Arknights and Fate, which are the other 2 gachas I play, are kind of on a low note right now. I think an Arknights event just started, but both of them have been kind of mechanically focused content recently. And the most recent Fate story chapter I have not played because I heard it was bad, and just kind of, I know what's going to happen there. I don't need to see it play out. And Arknight's most recent event was CC, which is a very fun mechanical event. And so, due in part to both my partner Ben and good friend Olivia playing Blue Archive, I decided, okay, it's finally time. And also there was Iroha, who drives a tank and is generally cool, I heard was kind of essential for multiplayer. So I was like, okay, if I'm going to start this at any time, it might as well be now. And it is okay, so gachas in general, kind of the very premise is morally reprehensible. But the narrative premise of Blue Archive is one of the worst that I've ever seen, because the setup is that you are the only adult in this world, and so you are a teacher to all of the girls that you can pull, who are they're all high school students.
So hold up. But you're not, though, right? Because in the very beginning, they talk about the existence of other adults. They talk about how you're sent by some organization.
Yeah. So, yeah, I guess you're not the only adult. It is. You're the only human, I guess, is what I'll say. Uh, if there are other humans, I haven't seen them. But and all of the girls have halos that make them immortal. Although
Wait, so they're not humans either?
yeah, I think that they are referred to as humans, at least in the translation, but they're not humans the way that we would think of them.
Oh.
Um, it is yeah. So aside from the premise, which is kind of is there are certain premises which it is easy to ignore because that is the basic setup, and then what is actually interesting is the characters. Every date you go on with girls is them kind of falling in love with you, which makes the setup kind of hard to ignore. But the story is really incredible. I think the ways that it tells story is really interesting because currently I think there are 4 storylines that are ongoing, and additional story for each of them is kind of interleaved with one another. So the first story is about the foreclosure task force, which is a bunch of girls who are trying to their school owes a ton of debt, and they're trying to not have their school taken over by the people who owe the debt. The second story is about a game developer club. They're just trying not to get shut down. And they find a robot who there will be more story about at some point, but where the story ends is just kind of a hopeful, oh, they made a game and they didn't get shut down. That's good. Anyway, the third story is really where it took off for me because it opens with a girl monologuing about the existence of Eden and if we could ever prove that paradise is real, and if even if we could prove if paradise was real, whether such a place like could possibly exist. And it kind of goes from there. It calms down a little bit as it goes into it's the makeup work club, I think is the name of the club that focuses on, which is a bunch of girls who are going to fail, and and Sensei is there to help them pass. But it is really, the first 2 stories feel like setup. They like kind of set up parts of the world, and then the third one is like, okay, here's what you're here for: religious schism. There are 2 schools, Trinity and Gehenna, which are, Trinity is kind of angels and Gehenna is very like devil themed. They're kind of eternally at war. There's a splinter group off of Trinity who kind of refused to ever stop hating Gehenna. Trinity is kind of trying to make a treaty with Gehenna to stop the fighting that is going on. So it is it's a lot of fun because the stakes go from kind of, oh no, will this school like get shut down? There are only like 5 students. And oh no, will the game dev club be like dismantled, or will it stay together? To what are the like does paradise exist, and also can Sensei stop these girls from getting expelled but also save the setting of the game as a whole, which is like, yeah, again, is it's a lot of fun.
Yeah, I've only played a little bit of it. I'm still on like the first story with the foreclosure task force, and Problem Solver 68 just got involved, like that group of that group of for-hire mercenaries who are just a total mess. But
Yeah,
yeah.
Problem Solver 68 is a lot of fun. Haru is a joy.
Yeah. Yeah, it's just hard for me to, like, keep my attention in gacha sometimes just because, like, the actions are so repetitive, but I do like the story going on there.
Yeah, I will say that I am the thing that I'm I'm playing through Blue Reflection 2 New Game Plus on hard, and that makes the game way more fun. Just to like play, I think Blue Reflection has the same problem that Caligula Effect does, and most modern RPGs that I've played have, which is if you do more than a little grinding, you're just gonna breeze through all of the fights.
Mm.
But yeah. And so like playing on hard has kind of solved that and made me there's a character, Reyna, who it's like, oh, you make a good tank, and so I'm gonna like choose your loadout basically so that you are a tank, so that the rest of this party doesn't get like one shot. Which is like, yeah, and so that is to say that it is hard for me sometimes, and it's funny because I host a podcast about narrative games, and then I'm here talking about a narrative game. But if there are mechanics in a game, I can tend to like, even if I care about and enjoy the story, I can tend to just kind of get distracted by mechanically playing the game. And so that is that partially happened with Blue Archive, but then I just did mechanical stuff for the first several days that I was playing, and then I got into the story, and now I'm like, okay, the story rules. I'm so excited to see more.
Excellent. As for me, I made a bit of a mistake. Days before Witch on the Holy Night came out, I had the bright idea that's like, okay, what if I start another super long visual novel in anticipation of starting Witch on the Holy Night, which is not as long as what I'm about to talk about, but it's still pretty lengthy. But yeah, I decided, hey, now's a good time to start Higurashi When They Cry. And I have played a little bit of Ryukishi stuff before. Like, I've completed the first half of Umineko, but kind of put it to the side just because there might be a thing we do with it in the future, but jury's still out on that. Second mistake I made is thinking that the level of horror to cognitive element of Umineko would still be present here. Higurashi's a fucking scary game, like, even compared to Umineko. It takes place in this small Japanese town in 1983. This young boy moves into... he moves there because his family needs to move there, and things seem to be going okay for the first few hours, and then you kind of find out, this town has a history of people dying every single year. Like, one person gets murdered, another person disappears. And that's just constant. Second, like, right after the annual festival, it happens again, and suddenly a cop ends up pulling the main character in and basically being like, hey, I want you to, since you're not from around here, I want you to keep your ears open and figure things out. And it's from just being pulled in that one time that a whole series of dominoes falls, at least for the first chapter, where the way people just kind of turn on you on a dime or just catch the character in unexpected situations. The thing about Umineko in comparison is Umineko is like a classic murder mystery situation set up in a isolated island where it's only this particular family and they're getting targeted, and at a certain point in the story it kind of abstracts everything to kind of be like, okay, why don't you just pay attention to the details and see if you can figure out the murder mystery. Here there's no such abstraction, even when things kind of reset chapter to chapter, and you're just stuck with this kid in this small town who, like, is dealing with things like home evasion or finding, like, sewing needles in the mochi his friends make for him. And there's just something very deep and personal about, like, seeing these friends kind of dissolve over, like, this one mistake that they may not even understand is a mistake. And, yeah, there's something really gruesome and graphic about it that kind of scared me a bit. It gave me a nightmare at least once, but it's still very well done. And, like, I ended up finishing two chapters in a month, which was not the rate that I was playing Umineko at. Umineko, it was like, okay, I'm going to wait 3 or 4 months before I start the next chapter, but this one really got its hooks in me.
Yeah, this was before Umineko, before I was aware, maybe before Umineko came. When did Umineko come out?
Trying to find that
out. Okay, it was in English. It seems it was come on, yeah, 2016 for English. And for years I was aware of Higurashi as just being like the people on the internet were just like, oh man, this is the real sicko shit. Oh, this stuff's, oh man, it'll fuck you up. And I'm like, that doesn't sound appealing. So I am not surprised to learn it's a little more twisted.
Yeah, it's one of those situations where I think the focus on something other than, like, if you read into it, kind of tying it back into what we're going to talk about today, it seems like one of Ryukishi's main influences for Higurashi was Tsukehime, compared to, like, Umineko taking a lot from, like, murder mystery novels and Phoenix Wright and stuff. So, like, there is a... the one teacher you see illustrated in this game, if you... I need to look up a picture of her for a moment, because once you see her, you're going to understand exactly where that influence is. Yeah, want to guess who that is based on from Tsukehime?
It's CL?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And she is also obsessed with curry to the point where, like, at some point you just make... At some point, there's a curry contest, and you decide just to hand in rice. And after the contest, she takes you aside and is like, "You do not understand the cultural significance of curry. I'm going to explain curry to you for an hour," and explains it so hard that by the time Kichi escapes, he's just wandering back to his friends, and all he can say is "curry, curry, curry" for a few minutes. But yeah. It's kind of fun to, like, look at a game and be like, oh, since I played Tsukehime, I can see its influence in other things around it. And, yeah, it's nice when we get a chance to do that since we have a habit of covering both older and newer visual novels here.
Yeah, it's definitely one of the, like, the sort of big influential ones in the space. So it'll be good that someone has experience and thoughts with it, and I don't have to ever touch
it. Yeah, I would never put you through Higurashi 6, don't worry.
You would fail to. I'm not worried. I have a real willingness to say no.
But yeah, probably time to get into the main event here. As something of a follow-up to our Tsukehime episode, we're covering its prequel now, Witch on the Holy Night. It initially came out for PCs in 2012, but it received a full... It received full voiceover, I understand, and just the rare Type Moon game that gets an English translation, an official English translation. And it happened to release 10 years later on the Nintendo Switch and PS4.
I think they also up-resed the art.
Oh yeah, that would not surprise me, because this is even on Switch, this is a 20 gigabyte visual novel, which is, that's incredibly rare to see. Even if you're playing on something like a PS4 or PC, 20 gigs for visual novel, that's a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Having to delete multiple games to install a visual novel, I was like, okay, all right.
Yeah.
My Fate Stay Night install folder is like 10 gigs, but I think most of that is audio. But that is also a game that is like 3 times as long as this or something.
Mm-hmm.
At least twice as long.
Yeah. I'll give a bit of a quick plot summary here. This takes place in 1989, and it kind of focuses on this woman named Aoko Awazaki, a high school student who happens to be president of the student council, and is generally considered by everyone around her to be very capable and a little frightening. She also happens to be a witch in training, living in the old Kuwanji estate on the top of a mountain, alongside her roommate, Alice Kuwanji. On a day that's supposed to be an off day from school, Aoko gets called in by one of the teachers to supervise a student named Sojiro Suzuki. He has lived in the mountains for his entire life and is now coming to this city in order to attend school and just live a somewhat normal life. And basically, her meeting him leads to this whole chain of events where, while she is trying to fight off a encroaching witch alongside Alice, you have this boy, Sojiro, who is a little too out of it for his own good, and ends up seeing things he shouldn't, and the three of them together get involved in a magical turf war that leads all three of them to be close in ways they never imagined.
Yeah, that's pretty much it.
Yeah.
Yeah, so where should we start? There's a whole lot of stuff here.
I think we should start with the most important thing, which is Type Moon, knock it off. First there was Altria, you dumb fucks, and now it's Sojiro Suzuki. Can you just...
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. Altria is
without spoiling, because I every time I accidentally spoil some stuff from Fate, I'm very surprised to learn there are people who don't know, because to me it's like, it was his sled territory, but also, that one turns out if I gave other context there would probably be some people, so
yeah.
But
Altria is Nasu's preferred romanization is what I've heard, which doesn't mean that it's correct, but at least there's a reason there. As the wildest
Sure.
part about the romanization of Japanese in this game is that it's incredibly inconsistent.
Yeah, there's that, and also like I guess we're gonna just get into my main issue because like I mostly have really great things to say about this, but there's that, and there's also just like the quality of the localization in general, like especially when you get to the second half. There's just a lot of typos all over the place. Like sometimes you have a situation where there's the wrong letter is used and it turns it into a completely different word. Things get turned into thongs at one point, and there's also just a lot of weird issues with capitalization, punctuation, spacing. It's a real shame because like once you look past all of that, the writing here is much better than I ever expected having played Tsukihime. Like after sitting through like dozens of lines about hot magma and Tsukihime, just
Yeah, that's the one, right? It's the one you always gotta go to.
yeah. There was just some turns of phrases here that I was like, God damn, Nasu, I never expected this from you, but you could be really captivating when you like have the right focus going on here.
I also feel like, sorry, I'll be quick. Like just to like drill down, like the typos are like often annoying, but sometimes they're like actively a problem. Like not only are they like typos in a way that create misunderstandings. In one of the bonus chapters, which is like a murder mystery, and it's the only part of the game that's actually has choices. So like you do need to have correct information to solve a mystery. There is a line where they're like, so there were 6 people here, and then it lists 7 people. And I'm like, motherfucker, the number of people in the room is key to this mystery. Can you get your shit together?
Yeah.
It's a mess.
I will say it is nice to have something Type Moon localized by a professional team because I think the Tsukihime and Fate Stay Night translations are serviceable but not good. It is. They're not done by a native English speaker, and so some of that is why they sound so stilted and bad. But but at the same time, damn, I wish that they'd had a second or third pass at fixing the typos and because I think other than that, the localization is really good, and it's a real bummer that there are problems with it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. My other my other much more minor issue is that like this is a thing that happens with a lot of Japanese games, but at a certain point it just stops letting you take screenshots entirely. Like it disables that on the Switch and probably for the PS4 as well if folks are playing on that. And it's just a situation where it's like sometimes I wish someone could just sit down with them and be like, y'all, people are going to upload the entire thing onto YouTube regardless. You could just let people take screenshots and save them and share them the way that they want to. Like, you could do a situation like Raging Loop where you just have a character speak up and be like, hey, just so you know, this is a visual novel and we prefer if people don't share past this point, and just engage with it that way. But just mechanically turning it off can be pretty frustrating.
It is especially funny because this game has been out for 10 years. This isn't
that too.
It hasn't been out in English, but the one thing I will say for this release is that I'm really happy that it does the thing that I wish basically every visual novel that has been localized does, which is there is a toggle between, I think it's in the Switch version at least, Chinese, Japanese, Chinese traditional, Chinese simplified, Japanese, and English. Which, yeah. And so, like, if you can read Japanese, you've been able to read this game for 10 years. It's not like people, if they wanted to search out spoilers or post them, they couldn't do that before now.
Yeah.
Yeah, totally.
So, but the actual game itself,
It's so
setting
pretty.
aside some of the issues, it's really like they opened the wallet, right? They actually were like, you know what? Let's actually use some of that Fate Go money on something, right?
So yeah, it is interesting. I don't know how much you two know about Type Moon, but I think it is, as far as I know, right now it is like 14 people. This game mostly made by a subset of that. And the scripting on the game, Nasu finished writing 3 years before the game released. And from what I understand, most of that 3 years, one person spent scripting the entire game. And it feels like it.
Jeez. Yeah, like, there's some incredible things here that I've never seen in, like, even modern visual novels. Like, there's a bit where Aoko and Alice are just sitting in front of a hot pot, discussing something, and the camera cuts multiple times to the top of the hot pot, and you can see the little shimmer in the pot itself. And like as the conversation is going on, you can see the ingredients disappearing one by one. And it's moments like that, and like the fights themselves as well. Like there is going to be a movie adaptation of this that comes out next year, but it's a situation where the visual novel is so... They managed to capture the motion of the fight so well that it's like, I'm not sure how much the movie will actually add to a fight like this, or moments like this.
Yeah. There was a scene where a character turns on a light, and I just like gasped because I was like, wait a sec, you like, yeah. There was an animation that played that was the room lighting up, and I was like, damn. This is such an incredible looking game. I think I've seen anime episodes with less animation than
Yeah. I mean, you get like in a visual novel, you get it like from the camera's perspective, moving towards a sliding door, the sliding door opening and then going into the room, and not like shot by shot, like the whole animation. And you're like, what? This is a visual novel. They don't do this.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, you could tell that they just poured a lot of love and money into making this work, because it's just... There were just multiple times where I was just sitting there and didn't really move on just because I was taking in a scene and thinking about what they just did. Like, it's especially like... I think it especially works for a character like Aoko because they do an amazing job of capturing her momentum as she's just power walking through areas, and like, they immediately sell to you within the first 10 minutes of this that she is a very motivated and dedicated person who, like, when she's given a task, she might hate that task, but she's gonna get it done no matter what. And it's amazing how much they sell that through motion alone, along with a few lines.
Mm-hmm. I will say,
Yeah.
I also love how Mahoutsukai uses the 69 aspect ratio, which is, I think... this is the first ADV game that I've played that has that, which is to say, like, there are two styles of visual novel, one where you have text boxes at the bottom with, like, little character sprites, and the other, which is this, where the text kind of covers the entire screen. And that can be hard for me because I prefer 4:3 in that situation, because it's easier for me to just, like, see the text if it's centered on the screen. But the way that they like cut up the backdrop to have, like, oh, you know, like a third of the screen is the background, or like multiple different backgrounds, or just all the ways that the 69 aspect ratio is used is, like, truly incredible.
And they don't have a lot of interest in doing things that even, I mean, this studio has done before with ADV visual novels. They don't like filling the screen with text in this, right? They're usually like, I feel like the most you'll get is like half a screen of text, and even that's pretty rare. Usually you're like at a third, which makes it feel, even though it's, you know, like it is a shorter game than the games they usually make. It's not short though. And I think it helps it feel like maintain this sense of momentum and pace that is really enjoyable.
And they also do things like when you move on to the next line in a page, it'll just dim the previous line in a way that, I don't know, keeps your focus on the next bit of the story.
I just like playing it. The first 10 minutes was me just writing down, damn, this game looks good in a bunch of different ways.
Like they have, you know, this may be a thing that is used more than I realized. Maybe I just haven't thought about it before, but I was noting a lot of production things, and it's like, oh, at the end of a line, it does have the fade. It also has a little indicator, whether it's like a spinning leaf to indicate that more text will appear on the same page, or a book icon to let you know that it'll change screens after this. But also there's the text log, and it has like a quick jump functionality that loads really fast, and you can jump way back in the whole, you know, in the story. It's just presentationally, I mean, it's just a really stunning achievement, honestly.
Yeah.
Yeah. I could have used towards the end, I could have used a little more variation on the music they were using, just because they have like 3 or 4 classical tracks that they play at when things are somewhat calm, but overall those tracks are really good, so I didn't mind it that much.
Yeah, I will say it is very funny going from Tsukihime to Fate to this, because Tsukihime has, I think, 9 or 10 tracks. That's it. And then Fate has so many. And then this is back down to not that many, which is just like an interesting. Fate is a longer game, but there's more variety in the music in Fate than there is in this.
But I also like, I mean, I get what you're saying, Jen, and I don't disagree about like there could be a little more like variety in it. But I also think it is to a certain degree a choice to like reflect the fact that this is a much more like tight story, not just in length, but like the number of characters it's about. Part of what makes Fate have so many different ones is you have this like big and eclectic cast, and you want to musically reflect all the different people in it and the different, you know, tones. And you know, this is mostly a story about Aoko and Sojiro and Alice.
Yeah, and the focus on classical music really suits Alice too. Her whole thing is that she's basically, she comes from a long line of witches who have these specific ploys called ploy kickshaws, and basically all of her powers result from very specific Mother Goose rhymes and things like that. And having a more classically focused selection of music really fits what she's all about, more or less, in terms of her powers and in some cases interests.
Yeah. Jumping off of what Six said really quickly, it is really fun. This game is mostly not a horror game, but it is fun returning to some parts of the vibe of Tsukihime, which is it is a game about a house and the people who live in the house. It is barely a game about the town, though there are like characters in the town and that the characters hang out with, and there's stuff that happens there, but it is really just at its core about 3 people, and the stakes are like very small. It's basically like the stakes are important for the characters, but do not get the impression that really anything is going to happen to the town no matter who wins.
Yeah, they make an effort of pointing out the church's role in all of this, where the church is there to more or less keep an eye on all mages, and it's a situation where they do offer they do offer Aoko, Alice, and Sojiro a safe haven while they're licking their wounds and dealing with that. But it's a situation where mage battles for territory happen all the time, and if this particular mage battle goes a specific way, the church will make no qualms about like honoring the new owners and stuff like that.
Yeah. You get in one of the post game bonus chapters, you do get that Toko makes some very specific threats about, what she'll do to the city. But I think it's like everyone involved knows they're kind of empty threats and is just sort of posturing to make it so that she can keep the conflict small.
Mm-hmm.
Which is really good.
Toko is such a fascinating villain. You get the sense where you of course get the way that she reacts to Aoko and the people associated with Aoko in a very venomous way. Like, she sees Sojiro as part of Aoko's property, and she makes a point of demonstrating, hey, I'll break whatever you own. I can break this boy anytime I want if I'm motivated enough. But you get to situations where she's just talking with other characters, and if they're not on her shit list, she's very... The way that she collects power is very unusual in that, she will defeat mages, but then she just creates a little world for them to hang out in based on whatever their interests are. And she just has a very casual conversation with one of the church members being like, yeah, so if you ever get caught by me... Well, the church member's the one to bring up, hey, if you ever happen to defeat me, I prefer this kind of world. Thank you very much. It's this interesting sensation that, if it weren't for this sibling rivalry, you could almost see her being not as much of a villain as she is, even though she's doing pretty villainous shit.
I don't agree with that, but okay. She makes it clear that she's I reflect their interests as long as their interests are horror. Yeah. Also, she makes it clear that every time she uses their powers, it's unbelievably painful for them. And that for a lot of them, maybe death would be preferable. She's not a good person.
That's a good point, yeah. It's just the way that she shows different faces towards people that kind of catches me off guard.
Yeah.
She has the glasses mode where she's very nice towards people, or she's either nice or just congenial in a human way, and that as soon as the glasses are off, she just takes on a sneer and is just ready to start fucking blasting people.
It's also nice for us after, with our experience here being Tsukihime primarily, a little poking at other Type Moon, but we'll leave that to you for now for Fen. But with our experience of how aggressively straight Tsukihime is, Type Moon has finally graduated to queer baiting. As Kumari specifically points out that Toko is the sort of person who's so pretty she makes me question my sexuality.
Yeah. I will say Fate is interesting because I know that there are a lot of people who kind of say, oh, Rin being bi doesn't matter. This game was oh no, it super matters. Aoko never spends pages talking about, oh my god, this girl's so beautiful. Which is something that Rin does repeatedly. And so it is interesting. There's a scene later on where Toko kisses Alice, and I was like, yo! And then immediately after, it does everything in its power to deflate that moment.
Where she's like, so please, no, listen, don't take this. It's just how I give people poison. It meant nothing.
Yeah.
It's a Russian taunt. Yeah. It's the moments this game chooses to up the sexual tension are pretty funny sometimes. Like the bit where she is confronting Sojiro for the first time, it just grabs onto his fucking collar, being like, hey, you want to come with me? I'd like you to be mine instead. And when he's clearly not having it, she's like, well, okay. Don't be surprised if I break you later, though. Mm-hmm. It's really interesting how it goes from... I guess we should get into, like, how Sojiro gets to the point where he's wearing a pet collar and is just living with them constantly.
God, what an incredible scene.
Because, like, the thing that really sets things off is that, so Alice and Aoko are doing their best to fight off Toko when they aren't aware that it's Toko. And during one of these skirmishes, Sojiro just happens to wander into the area when that should be impossible. And for the next few days, Aoko and Alice are, like, aggressively searching for who this could be. And as soon as Aoko puts two and two together, she kind of has to be like, okay, this... I'm not gonna... It's obviously not a big deal, because obviously I don't have feelings or anything, but I'm gonna have to kill this boy. And she gets Sojiro to appear in an abandoned theme park, Kitsyland, and which the book goes to great lengths, the visual novel goes to great lengths to say, oh yeah, by the way, this theme park was all bread themed and it sucked and that's why it shut down. But essentially she spends like a good while chasing him down in this hall of mirrors, shooting blasts of energy bullets that could probably just kill him in one shot. But by the time she finally backs him into a corner, she has to deal with one of Toko's automatons again. And yeah, one thing leads to another, and even though she promises to like let him go free, Alice happens to be on the scene, and she's like, what the fuck are you doing? You came to kill him. If you're not going to do it, I'm going to take care of both of you. And the scene right after that might be the longest scene in the entire story, just the way that it turns into this whole horrific situation where the park is coming alive, and Sojiro and Aoko are doing whatever they can to like escape the various ploys that Alice is sending out from her perch.
Yeah.
But eventually the compromise is reached because Aoko wins that fight, and they're like, okay, we will keep him as a pet, and while we research how to erase his memory, and then we'll erase his memory.
Yeah, and like their first way of doing it, of keeping him in check, is just like, okay, we're just gonna feed him poison every day, and when he comes home for the evening, we'll feed him a new batch of poison that will cancel out the old batch of poison, and it'll just keep going like that until he's dead or we find a cure. Or we find a cure for his memory, basically.
But also, crucially, we're not going to tell him that. And so when he's like, oh yeah, I came home late, what's the big deal? They're like, we might have fucked this up.
Alice and Aoko are just incredible as, like, roommates who could potentially kill each other one day, but for the moment have a mentor-mentee relationship, and also just get into weird arguments about whose turn it is to cook, or whether they're going to order takeout, whether they have enough. And there's battles specifically about, like, okay, why did you eat out? Now I can't order takeout because they only accept 2 people minimum for takeout. And it turns into this whole thing. But
and then this is the defense mechanism of the restaurants in town, because they can't refuse to deliver to them. But they're up on a big hill, basically the side of a mountain, and they're like, we don't want to fucking go up there. And like, okay, it's a 2-person minimum, but like now there are 2 people living there, so they try and get them, and they move it to a 3-person minimum, but then Sojiro moves in, so they're still fucked.
Exactly.
Yeah, Alice and Aoko being roommates is incredible. The moment the first chapter is really like set up, it's Aoko and Sojiro meeting for the first time, and a little bit of setup on like who Aoko is and where Sojiro came from. Although, yeah, real quick, this is a game that is very clearly the first in a planned trilogy. Who could say when those other 2 games are coming out? Because this was first released 10 years ago.
Yeah.
And they haven't even mentioned the other ones since it first came out.
Yeah. I think that Nasu has said that next up is Tsukihime Red Garden, remake, and then he's gonna work on Mahoyo 2. So fingers crossed in another 10 years we'll get Mahoyo 2. But yeah, so chapter 1 is a lot of setup, and then there's a like 1.5, which is like 4 short stories basically, that is it's an interesting way to do it, is have an archive that is a bookshelf with basically like a book for each major scene. And it allows doing stuff like chapter 1.5, which is, these aren't part of the narrative so much as they are just like interesting like side stories. And so it's fun like kind of hopping out of chapter 1 and then reading that, and it's 4 different scenes, and the one that was Alice and Aoko in the drawing room talking, I was like, okay, I'm so on board now with where this is going, because they have a very fun dynamic.
Yeah, I'm also a big fan of that specific side chapter from that section where Aoko drags Sojiro to church so that they can volunteer and just make an excuse for Sojiro to have, because he has so many goddamn part-time jobs. Like every other scene, he's talking about a different part-time job, it seems, and yeah, you get a little bit of an introduction to the Mage Association / the church, and you meet this blind sister who she and Aoko just immediately fucking hate each other's guts. Like, there's clearly some amazing bad blood between them, and yeah, it's really entertaining to watch, like, these various characters bounce off one another.
Yeah, Ritsuka meets Sojiro, and that is such a joyful... Ritsuka is a lot of fun as a character. And I think that's right. Yeah, she does get a little more time, but most of the time that you get with Ritsuka is in the murder mystery one. But that is such a fun, like, Ritsuka and Sojiro interacting is... Sojiro has no idea what's going on, which is largely true, but it's that is a lot of fun. Just seeing
sometimes his obliviousness is justified, and sometimes it's not. So, and that's a time where it seems pretty justified.
Yes.
Yeah, I did not realize that. I did not realize that Ritsuka and Yuki were sisters until, like, I was pulling up the pages for this podcast. Like, they are...
Yeah, I think the murder mystery thing is the thing that tipped me off. Because I think that they say in there that they're sisters, but...
You do have the bit where Yuika is just constantly gut-punching Ritsuka every time she gets into, like, Sherlock Holmes mode during that scene.
Yeah.
It's one of the times where I feel like the goofs in that chapter actually helped me understand Ritsuka as a character better, because I enjoyed her decently, but I think what's so great about Ritsuka to me is that she is a member of the Mages organization, and she has gotten like a fairly stable role, right? And it is just like the world's biggest relief to her, because she's not a good mage. She doesn't really have talent or, motivation to try hard. And so she's fallen into a job where she can just sort of hang out and occasionally look at the house on the hill and get paid rent for that. And she's just ecstatic about this fact.
Yeah. Yeah. I guess real quick, in no way does the murder mystery feel canonical. I know that it is set a year in the future, and that all the deaths that happened during it are reversed, and that everyone's memory is erased. But even before any of that is revealed, all of the magic people are so open about being mages. Around like half of that party are just normal people who don't know about magic.
Yeah.
And also, it ends with everyone waking up with no memory of the last 2 days in a stranger's house and going, this is fine.
Yeah.
No.
They also introduce a character there that doesn't get any screen time anywhere else, named May Riddle Archlot.
She's incredible. The voice screen does one of the like smartest things that, and maybe most modern games do this. I haven't seen it before, where it just displays like question marks for characters that you haven't met yet. And so you spend the entire game, if you've ever looked at that screen, going, there's still one missing. When is this character going to show up? And when she did in the murder mystery chapter, I was like, oh yeah, this rules. She's incredible.
She gets murdered by Alice in a fucking penguin outfit.
It's so funny.
Yeah, like, at first, well, the whole thing with that chapter is that, like, they're dealing with a ploy that is disguised as someone else, and the way that people die is by laughing, and, like, the first way, Alice kills her twice. The first time is, like, getting Sojiro to, like, say some French words to her, and she somehow manages to stand back up being like, you think just stopping my heart will stop me from existing? You got another thing coming. And then, like, the second time, the lights go out, they come back up. Alice is just in a penguin outfit for, like, 5 seconds. And that's enough to, like get May killed for good.
It got me.
Yeah, and it's great because it's like at that point they have figured out that the way this works is, so we've said ploy a lot of times, Jen. I don't think that's like, we haven't explained that at all.
Yeah,
they're
okay,
like
so
summons basically.
Yeah, well, familiars might be the closest thing. Ploys are
Go ahead.
I was just gonna say, ploys are basically something that Alice herself either makes or gets handed down, and yeah, they all have different rules, and Alice is clearly aware of what this one's rules are.
Mm-hmm. And like, it's amazing because at that point they have figured out the rule of like laughing kills you, right? And so like, there's no way to read this but a deliberate attempt by Alice to murder this girl. Everyone knows this, but Alice is like, it's fine, I don't like her.
Yeah.
And everyone's like, yeah, that's fair.
Well, I think that I think the only other person who noticed her in that costume was, Kamari, and basically Alice just takes Kamari aside and is like, look, just don't mention this to anyone else, and I think she comes up with the bullshit excuse just being like, yeah, that's in my collection of outfits. I accidentally slipped into it.
Because she steps out to change, the power goes out, she comes back, and she's wearing the penguin outfit, and then the power goes out again, and she comes back in a different set of clothes, and she's like, yeah, sorry, I put on the wrong thing.
That's a good joke. That is like, yeah, that is mages to me, is just casually murdering each other. And like, Alice does know that probably it's fine because everyone's gonna come back, but Alice is the most mage non-antagonist I think that Nasu's ever
You just
written.
say that because she's the best character in this fucking game.
I knew she would be your favorite, sis.
She's so good.
I love the bit where like they even give a bit of a flashback to when Aoko first moved in with Alice, and Aoko's bright idea was to like buy a bunch of bottled water since she knew that Alice just drinks tea all the time, and if she had her way, Alice would have 7 tea times a day, and Alice immediately reacts to that being like, what the fuck are you doing? Like, we just drink... Do you not understand the power of Japan's tap water? We just use that.
I wish that I could drink tea 7 times a day. Unfortunately, my caffeine tolerance is very low, and I don't like like waking up needing caffeine. But I respect Alice and her desire for endless tea.
Yeah,
I'm just too lazy.
Alice spent a decent portion of her life in England, and like her various powers are based on like English rhymes and stuff. So you kind of get that, but also it's funny how she can be. It's funny how she presents a veneer of snobbery sometimes to the people around her, and then like she'll just she'll just be given something by Sojiro that's like either some convenience store or like the typical high school idea of a meal where you just throw everything together into one thing. And when someone tries to take it from her, she's just like, no, this is mine. I'm eating it.
Yeah, Alice is interesting because, as I said, she's kind of the most mage character that Nasu's written. Which is like, so in the way that like Aozaki has never killed anyone and doesn't really want to. This is also true of Rin. But like Alice can and will kill people. And part of that is, oh yeah, she just doesn't make like emotional attachments. I don't know that it's canonical that mage marriages are all arranged, but I know that like certainly for powerful families most of them are. And so it is fun seeing her develop feelings for Sojiro because she hasn't like interacted with humans before.
Yeah.
Yeah, and like the way that when shit starts going real bad and Sojiro goes out of his way to like retrieve her from the park and save her by bringing her back to the house, like you can basically see the conflicting feelings running through her. Like she's starting to realize that she didn't want this to happen because she didn't want him to be in danger, and that's such an unfamiliar feeling to her. Especially since when he was first held captive in the house, her whole attitude towards it was like, okay, I said I'd give it a certain amount of time, and either he'll be dead by then because of the various traps in the mansion, or I'll just kill him, it's whatever. But just watching her get to a point where it's like, I don't want him involved, but that's not because I don't like him, it's because I want him to be safe, is interesting.
Mm-hmm.
There's even like this, the very end of, the main story even has this really great like punchline of like the ways in which he just doesn't know how people think, right? Because at the very end, it's like they haven't erased Sojiro's memory, and we get a first person bit from Aoko as she discovers the book they've been looking for to erase someone's memory. And she's like, you know what? I don't think I'm going to use this. And I know Alice didn't, because Alice clearly found it and hid it. And her idea of hiding it was putting it on top of the bookshelf, which makes it stand out way more.
It was also in a corner, but yeah, it's very funny.
Because like Aoko is like, I'm going to hide it so no one will. You know what? No, I'm going to hide it like Alice did. It is a bad hiding spot, but also respect.
Real quick, one more thing about it is interesting, and you two may not have picked up on this because you've only read Tsukihime, but it is interesting that in Nasu work, boys always live in Japanese style houses and women always live in Western style mansions.
Yeah, I guess that's I know some Fate stuff, so I know that.
Yeah. It is just interesting seeing that pattern here as well, and it's like, okay, maybe Fate and Tsukihime were chance. I think that K&K also does this. Although we haven't gotten there yet. That's our next thing. And it is just funny seeing that here as well as like, oh yes, Sojiro at least grew up in a Japanese style house. How do you all feel about how little detail he gets in terms of where he came from?
I was waiting for them to explain what the fuck is up with like his neck bandage, because there's a specific scene where like Alice and Sojiro spend several scenes to themselves in ways that like leaves Aoko out of their like shared knowledge in some ways. There's a bit where Alice retrieves the neck bandage and she just mentions to Sojiro, does Aoko know about this already? And Sojiro doesn't really know how to respond to that, and Alice just simply goes, well, it's probably better off that way. And it's like, For a longest time, I thought that meant that Sojiro had already died once.
I mean, who knows what it means? I think, like, that and the stuff with him, like, not knowing much about how he lived on the mountain, but it, like, almost being implied they were being trained for, like, a specific thing, are, like, the clearest sequel teases, I think, in the story.
Yes. Yeah.
I guess it didn't bother me because I don't care about Sojiro, which is a compliment, because usually I actively dislike these characters, and instead I'm like, Sojiro's fine. Sometimes he brings good things to a scene, but like, there was a point where Jen was tweeting a bit about her experience playing this game, and I was like, oh no, I'm heading to the final bit, and I just hope everyone's okay. And I'm like, I mean, Sojiro could die, it'd be fine.
I got so attached to Sojiro. Like, there's this. The way that he'll wander into scenes and just be around people who are clearly sniping at each other using sarcasm and shit, and he's just in the center of the screen doing his little, very casual sprite smile that's basically like, I am also here. It always cracked me up. And I do think that occasionally he just has some incredibly... Well... The story goes out of its way to say that he has some incredibly weird ideas about what counts as usual and what doesn't, just because it's his first time in a city and seeing mage battles is just like, oh, okay, guess shit happens here. But there are some times occasionally where he'll say some stuff about money and it's like, oh boy, someone needs to teach this boy some theory.
Yeah, for sure. It is interesting. I think we get the end right before they reach Aoko's parents' house and Sojiro is supposed to go get his memory wiped. Aoko asks about his upbringing, and I was like, oh, thank God, we're finally getting his deal. And then it is just a tease that is like, well, yeah, that probably wasn't a normal upbringing, something's going on there. Which... I think very early on, I wrote down that he's a Nanaya-like, and I don't know that that's true, but it certainly feels like the kind of thing that is, I think it's Kagetsu Toya, which is a fan disc for Tsukihime. You get more detail into what the Nanaya were and like how they lived. And yeah, it certainly feels like he was trained as an anti-mage weapon.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. That is definitely the vibe.
Which is like, I rolled my eyes when he punched a werewolf so good that it fell over. But sitting with the rest of that scene, I think that is both. I didn't mind that as much, and also I'm more exhausted by how that scene ends than that moment. But
sure.
The tease for okay, this isn't just some like random person who grew up in the mountains and therefore all of this is happening. It is like, oh no, that's he has been trained for this. Was like, okay, I can accept a little more that he is as essential as he is in this story.
And also, I feel like it helps with, I mean, like early on, it was sort of a thing I just came to terms with because you have to read the story, right? But early on, it's like you're sitting here reading Nasu being like, you see, if you grow up in the mountains, you don't know what time is. You have no concept of the future whatsoever. And I'm like, I don't think that's true, Nasu.
Yes. Yeah, that was the other part that was like, okay, are you just being like weird about rural people, or is this going somewhere?
Yeah, occasionally he'll just like drop a few lines of philosophy within the text, and it can either read, okay, he's doing something interesting here, or what the fuck are you talking about? But,
or he's just like, if you live on a farm, you don't care if you live or die. I'm like, all right, Nazi.
Coming off the end of Heaven's Feel, which is it has like 3 or 4 conclusions, and the end of that route before the epilogues really just feels like Nasu sitting down and writing an essay about like a bunch of different topics. I will say that none of what was in this game ever hit me that hard, but yes, it does sometimes become a little like, okay, Nasu, I see what you're doing.
I mean, we're off of Tsukihime, right?
Uh-huh.
This is on the like degrees of like Nasu being on one. I guess it's easy for me to say this because I didn't live in the mountains all my life, but this seems like a pretty harmless bit of Natsu being a weirdo.
Yes.
Yeah. Also, it's funny because it ties in well with all the other characters just trying to guess at what his previous life was like, just in terms of like him not knowing very basic concepts or him doing something that would be difficult for anyone else with complete diligence and focus. Like the bit where he suddenly decides, he gets up one day, looks around and decides, hey, you know what? This mansion really needs its gardens trimmed, and then just spends the rest of the day doing that. Even as he occasionally looks in and complains about the girls not helping. But that is a thing I really love about his character development. Like, he starts off just being very enamored with everyone he meets, and eventually he starts seeing Aoko the way everyone else sees Aoko, and gets to a situation where it's like, okay, lady, you better help me out with this stuff, or can't believe I'm doing all this for you, and you're just gonna sit here, like, coming up with new ways to insult me.
Aoko does love insulting Sojiro, and I support her in this. I think, yeah, the biggest thing early on that didn't work for me was how much it felt like Aoko had a crush on Sojiro and just didn't know it.
Mm-hmm.
And some of that is Nasu gave an interview with 4Gamer, yeah, where he said, "Oh, this is a work about characters, about boys and girls before they discovered love." Or before they discover love, which is like interesting because it is certainly true that like Sojiro is the first boy that Alice has crushed on. Certainly didn't seem like Sojiro had anyone to crush on before Alice. And I think I would have been way more down on the early Aoko stuff even after finishing the game, had it not ended up that it is like very clearly Alice Sojiro are the pair that are going to get together, and Aoko is just kind of there.
Yeah, the bit like immediately after the theme park showdown where Aoko has been given inaccurate information by Tobimaru that one of their classmates and like the vice president of the student council that like, oh yeah, Sojiro totally has a thing for you. And as she is trying to find ways to tease him about that or like confront him about that, and he just goes like, what? No, I don't know where you heard that from. That's not true. The way that she just the way that she interacts with that knowledge and has to self-reflect on how she just said a bunch of embarrassing shit in front of a guy who doesn't even like her. And her answer to that, the way out of that, is just cold-cocking Sojiro and knocking him out in one punch. That bit made me laugh so hard.
Aoko's incredible.
Yeah, especially when you find out that she did it to Tobimaru too.
Yeah.
It's just...
part of what I love about that scene is when Sojiro is telling Tobimaru, we get the narrator saying, like foreshadowing, saying, Tobimaru really had no idea how much this like misunderstanding, how much trouble this misunderstanding would cause, which leads me to one of my favorite parts of this game is that the narrator is a character, and I think a lot of the time the narrator is just kind of like narrating, but there's a moment early on where it's like, oh yeah, I don't really know what Sojiro was thinking here. Like, who could say what the vibe was? And then additionally, the chapter 3, I think, is a flashback. yeah, it's a flashback to what happened in the park when Alice and Aoko got spied on by Sojiro, and it shifts into first person, and I was like, oh, hey, wait, what happened? Why are we first person now? Which, yeah, how'd y'all feel about that?
I feel like the narrator is characterful, but I wouldn't say a character, if that's fair. I mean, like, I think there are points where the narration expresses an opinion, right?
Mm-hmm.
Or you know, betrays its lack of omniscience and also not being one of the people on. It's like neither is it an omniscient or is it the memories of one of these characters, right?
Well, yeah,
but I don't think it being an individual is ever. Sure. But I don't think ever is it like positioned as being like the, what? Why did my brain stop? I wish, you know, you ever have a moment where your brain just stops? But it's never positioned as having like individuality or like anything like that. I feel like, the first person part was weird, and I still think it's a little clunky, actually.
Yeah, and there's just a few times where occasionally it will change focus on specific characters, and it takes a moment to like recalibrate. Like, it works a little bit better when it's one of the side chapters, just because it's the character they start out with, and you can kind of get a bit of their internality. But there's also that one side story where Aoko and the gang stop a scam, and the way that it swaps perspectives multiple times throughout that kind of threw me for a loop sometimes.
Yeah. The side stories feel less like this. I guess going in, I already knew, and I guess y'all did too, that Aoko was a magician and had true magic, because that's explained in Tsukihime. But I had, because I think it's the second magic is referenced in Stay Night, I looked up what all the true magics were and stumbled on a spoiler of what Aoko's was. And so part of the joy of early in the game was being like, okay, I know Aoko's stuff is time travel. I don't know what that means, but it is fun how hard the game leans on that. And there's yeah, this ties into another point, but I'll wrap this up first. Is yeah, I think that the chapter 3 being first person was so fun because I was like, oh, okay. The narrator is Aoko as a magician, and so it is Aoko out of time. And so sections that aren't like the quote unquote present are the narrator kind of is more embodied there, I guess. Which is, yeah, was just like a fun kind of, oh, this is interesting that the narrator is someone. And yeah, I think it's, yeah. But what that also ties into is the narrator, or this is a game that technically happens during the middle of the like economic bubble in Japan, but feels like a post-crash game.
Yeah.
The theme park, like, immediately going out of business. All of the characters feel like let's see, what's the note I wrote down? It feels like almost every character is just waiting for the bubble to pop. They all know it's going to end and almost want it to. Which is like, I think part of that is just Nasu can't write a pre-crash work.
Yeah.
I think that it would be possible for someone to, but he kind of grew up at just the right time that it is hard to imagine him doing that. But it is interesting how much it is like, oh yeah, this is like a 1980s story, but everyone knows that the economy is going to collapse in a couple of years.
Yeah. You especially see that with Tobimaru, because he is like the heir apparent to his family's fortune, even though his family is more or less skipping one of the older brothers in order to get to him. And you get some interesting moments with him where he he's kind of reflecting on how this specific period in his high school life is going to disappear rather quickly, just because he's in a privileged position, being the son of one of the biggest, one of the school's most prominent board members, and just various bits like that. And all he wants to do is run away from most of this and find what he wants for himself.
I feel like I really appreciate Tobimaru for that, because I think, like, there's this thing, we all know this, there's this thing that anime loves to do, and Japanese media in general, at least like anime affiliated. I guess I like, this didn't come up so much in Zatoichi, for instance, but where, you know, they have, you know, kids yelling about like the power of youth, right? Which doesn't fucking happen. Kids don't do that. The way, like, when you're thinking about youth like that, I think generally at least my experience of it and those around me, is way closer to Tobimaru, where you're conscious of the fact that life is going to get worse, but you're not thinking about how great things are right now, you know? And I really appreciated his perspective in that way, where he's this guy who's like, yeah, I mean, I've got things good right now, and none of this is going to matter in a couple of years. And that's scary.
Yeah. I think that he gets one of the best scenes where he's just talking with Sojiro, and they do a lot with the animation there and just the sound design, where he's reacting to various things Sojiro is saying to him, or things he's trying to tell Sojiro, by leaping out and back into his little creaky folding chair. And it's great to see all of that happen, and then, like, Aoko gets involved, and the situation goes from interesting to really bad for him once Aoko figures out what they've been talking about. And by figures out, I mean, she just asks a few questions, and Tobimaru thoughtlessly just blurts everything out.
It really tells you a lot about how Aoko has been as student council president, that, yeah, fairly early on in the story, she's like, Tobimaru, I need you to go to every student in the school and find out exactly what they were doing and where they were at this time, 2 days ago. And he's like, yeah, okay, that makes sense.
Yeah, when is it? It's early on in the game. I wrote down a note that is like, damn, Aoko became... Oh yeah, it's chapter 4. Damn, Aoko became student council president and immediately set up a panopticon. Which is like, that's... Yeah, normal student council presidents don't do that.
No.
Yeah, and just offhand...
just used to it.
Yeah, there's a bit where she pops into one of the classrooms and people are just making a bunch of comments about her spying on people and, like, what her relationship is with Sojiro, and she's just like, haha, guess what? Finals are soon, and if you fuckers don't perform, I'm sending you to the building slightly off of school, and you're gonna have to clean that shit. Very much an iron fist sort of ruler.
Mm-hmm.
It is so funny, too, that, like, the one person she leaves out of her dragnet is Sojiro, and Tobimaru just casually is like, oh yeah, I know you told me not to look into him, but we were just kind of talking. It seems like he saw some shit.
He's just like, he was just talking about a duel between mages. I don't know. Seemed pretty crazy.
Yeah.
You do get one of Aoko's best sprites from that, where, like, she has many amazing sprites, but there's one in particular that I think only shows up 2 or 3 times, where her face just becomes a very low-detailed cartoon angry dinosaur or whatever.
Yeah.
That, and also, like, the bit where Sojiro is, like, still recovering from being knocked unconscious and being carried around in that little pill bottle. And he's just having dreams of the countryside where Aoko is walking around and screaming like a kaiju.
I'm particularly fond of, like, every time, like, Alice gets like a gremlin face and, like, slides in from out of frame. Those are all very good.
Uh-huh. Alice is Alice is incredible because she's not super expressive, but she gets a lot of really fun sprites.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And the moments where she's just the one where she just kind of has her pinky raised to her mouth and she's just thinking on something is one of the best ones. When she's clearly taken aback by something.
One thing that really threw me for a loop is early on, I not like, I didn't close a door or anything, but like the first bit of like magic you see is Alice, using the Thames golem, Thames, excuse me. God, I'm disqualified from what? I don't know what I'm just anyway. I was like, wait. And that scene, like, is our sort of our first show of magic. And I was like, okay, so we're going to have these scenes where magic stuff happens. And, like, whatever, I guess. That's fine. And then, like, one of the we get a few small ones, but the next big one we get is the House of Mirrors, which felt very visual novel in that I felt like the pacing was bad. It just dragged on too long and sort of belabored the chase and everything for me. And then it leads right into, the Flat Snark, like reviving the hellish amusement park, which is just a fucking incredible sequence.
Yeah.
I largely agree that I think the first half of the House of Mirrors could have been like half the length. But yeah, I do like, my favorite part of the House of Mirrors is Aoko having set up like magical bombs on all of the supporting pillars for this place that she has to go punch a detonator for.
And when she's explaining this to Sojiro and his reaction is, damn, you really want to be dead, huh?
Yeah. That is certainly the best part of that scene. I think that the chase goes on too long.
It feels so, I mean, I don't know, maybe it could just be a sign of the ones I played or whatever. Probably is. But it feels so visual novel, just like the 4 in a row scenes of like, and then I dodged and kept running. It's like, okay.
Yeah.
Got it.
Yeah. And because the interesting part of that scene is the doll being a like self-perpetuating curse machine. And looking like Aoko, and like, you just get to that stuff faster. You don't need to spend so long on Sojiro being chased. But then yeah, I had seen magic circles in the like promo art and trailers and stuff. I don't know that I like intentionally watched a trailer before playing it, but I probably did at some point. And I was like, this looks fine. And then the Flat Snarks fight, I was like, oh no, never mind. This rules. This is incredible.
It's such a, like, I don't know, maybe like as it went on, they showed enough other stuff that it's like, okay, but I feel like if you are like pitching this to like, the team, right? And like asking for the budget, this is the thing where you're like, this is why we need the budget. Look at this shit. It's just incredible. The fucking like little like bread golems and, like all the lights turning on, and it just...
Yeah, the scene of the amusement park lighting up is like breathtaking.
Yeah. The bit where Sojiro leaps from a roller coaster and uses the floating Humpty Dumpty sentry that's just ready to curse and kill him at any moment so that he can land safely and like destroy the automaton for good. That is quite the sequence.
And then it activates its curse out of outrage as being used as like a platform.
Yeah, but I like the bit of that being, though, that if Sojiro had kept looking at it, he would be dead. But instead, it like activates a less powerful curse when you look away from it. Which I think is, we can talk about the wonderful world of ploys, but I have one more thing to say about the Flat Snark fight, aside from, damn, it looked really pretty. One of my favorite moments of that was Aoko realizing that true magic could save her, and then saying and rejecting it and then being like, wait a sec, I don't even know how to do that yet anyway.
Yeah, instead her bright idea is just to like destroy 10 fences and then being like, well, I won't survive, but you will. And then Sojourner's just like, yeah, but then she's just gonna come after me.
Yeah.
I also like in retrospect at that point, there is a character you've seen very little of, but you've seen a bit. And at this point, Robin seems really ominous.
Yeah, because like she's having a conversation where you can't hear the other side with this Robin, and Alice is just being like, yes, you've been keeping an eye on both of them. What should we do about this one? And things like that. But
she's like, I think I'll give them a chance. And you get like, clearly the Robin disapproved. But knowing Robin, it was like, what are you talking about, Gov?
Yeah.
Yeah. There's a bit where like eventually, well, the revelation behind Robin is so funny because like you get this whole side chapter where Sojiro is just talking with Kamari, and she goes into this whole thing about, like, the North American passenger pigeons that were killed out of overuse and overhunting by American colonists who clearly didn't know what the consequences of their actions. So if you see a rare breed of bird, just give it the utmost respect because it might be the last one in the world. And then Sojiro goes home and is suddenly able to hear Robin, and you just start hearing things like, "Are you having a bird bath of me, mate?" in the most cutesy, playful voice imaginable.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's just like he like fell out of a more like crass version of Oliver Twist and is here to make your day suck.
Yeah, just the scene where Sojiro's just looking downcast as he's being repeatedly dive bombed by this bird that's just yelling weird things at him is so good.
Yeah, I really enjoyed the scene where and I don't remember her name because I'm very bad at names, but the girl who's Sojiro's, I guess they did work at the same convenience store and then she convinced him to quit.
Yeah, Kamari.
Yeah. Where she is just like, she's like, no, I don't like birds. Anyway, I'm gonna go on like a 15-minute monologue about how sad it is that these birds died out.
And her ending thing is being like, so just remember, always be nice to birds.
Yeah.
Yeah, and his takeaway from the story isn't really how sad it is, just being like, damn, the birds should have gotten good. Yeah, it's... This story has an interesting relationship with, like... You'll just hear an entire tangent go on about a specific character, like, when you have a different understanding of who they actually are. And then it'll smash cut to, like, a real glimpse at who they are. That's like, oh, okay.
Quick side note on passenger pigeons. Did you know that there has been a proposal put forward to basically, like, unextinct them?
Huh.
They're like, no, it's fine. We've got enough genetic samples. We could basically do this, like, combination of, like, you know, like, cloning and then like swapping them out with the eggs of other birds and we could bring them back. And people are like, that's really fucked up though. So it hasn't happened just yet.
Yeah. Try to think of where to go next. I guess since we just talked about Kamari, we could also get into Kinomi, which is like this story's version of the Tsukihime best bro character
of the Draft Man. Yeah.
Of the Draft Man, yeah. Kinomi is like that classic boy who just has the worst ideas and is a slacker, but even though characters kind of can't stand to be around him, he's still very much the kind of person where you just end up liking him out of sheer force of will by him. Or he's impossible to get rid of. He's the guy who just shows up and you can't tell him to go.
Yeah.
Yeah. I know. I remember at least U6 being really down on Arihiko, and I know that you did. I think that some of Arihiko's best moments are in Kagetsu Toya, which is fair because he doesn't get a ton of time in Tsukihime proper. But I do remember fondly that one of his pastimes, one of his favorite hobbies, is just like going on tours with like the elderly, just like going on sightseeing tours with them. And I think oh god, what is his name?
Kinomi?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
He is a fun guy to hate, I guess.
I mean, I think it helps that, like, I mean, it's a general thing. Like, this is, unlike most of Type Moon's previous work, this is not an H game, right?
Yes.
And it really helps the character of Kinomi where that just can't be part of his character.
Yeah.
Because it's like, he's, you know, he is the playboy archetype, right? Like, sort of like the, like, Playboy makes it sound like he's successful and he's not,
Yeah.
I guess. So that's kind of flawed.
Yeah,
But that's part of the thing, right? Where, like, he's like, hey, everybody, let's go out and have a mixer. Oh, boys and girls hanging out together. And everyone's like, yeah, but everyone else finds someone and you always go home alone.
Yeah.
And it makes it a lot more charming, I think.
Yeah. He also gets the most ridiculous death during the murder mystery thing where he just turns into a pile of money.
I feel like Ares is more ridiculous, but, you know.
Well, I don't know whether that actually happened or not. That's the thing.
True.
I feel like that could have just been easily part of the killer's plan there, just describing it in a way that would specifically get Yuika to crack up.
Yeah.
Which that's the real thing about Sweethearts, the ploy that is the killer by making you laugh, right? Is it apparently also has an intuitive sense for everyone's sense of humor, which is incredible.
Yeah. I guess we could get into that since we're just talking about Sweethearts' character. Like, there's that... once you get to a certain point, like... The way that chapter works is that you're supposed to listen to the testimony and, like, accurately point out which ones are kind of sus. And then you get to the points where you're just doing obvious things to make Komari and the others survive as long as they can.
Mm-hmm.
If you end up doing the latter part well, but not the former, you get to the point where Sojiro just steps out in the funny glasses and does a bit where it's like, I am an alien and I'm coming here to conquer Earth, and that's enough to get Komari to crack up. And he more or less just tells you his motivation before you die.
Oh, I don't think I got that.
No, I didn't get any game overs in that, so.
Oh, I got a lot of game overs.
Oh. I think I got some, like, just the random stuff. I think I mostly got lucky or at times used there are times where I feel like I didn't have a common sense choice and I think I just got lucky. But most of the time it was like, well, Aoko said she stayed downstairs the whole time and she specifically stopped by my room to say hi. So no, you're lying.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's...
I think the first bad end you can get is before it is clear that it is like stranded storm murder mystery is at the very beginning. You can say, I'm just gonna go home, and Kumari gets murdered, and I was like, oh, that's what this bit is.
Yeah, like, the clever thing about the whole Sweetheart setup is that, like, all the characters get distracted by finding, like, the Sweethearts and thinking that that'll be enough to solve things, but Alice at one point kind of mentions that Sweethearts finds a pair, like, it can influence another person to, like, do its bidding, more or less, and the big secret is that, like, everything that Komari has been thinking about as this stuff has been happening ended up coming true. And of course, you do find Sojiro is the one that is secretly like describing deaths to make people laugh or things like that. But just by a process of elimination, once once Kamari points at Sojiro and nothing happens, it's like, oh, okay, I guess I am Sweethearts then.
It's also
And,
like the choice itself that you have to make, I think, is very funny though, right? Because the logic is like, oh, because I keep guessing right, it must be because I'm a killer. So it's like, fair enough.
Yeah. Real quick about Kamari. I just on her like wiki page, and she did not exist in the original. So I don't know if we've said this. Mahoutsukai no Yoru was originally a like proper paper novel that Nasu wrote in the 90s, and he shopped it around, and it never got sold. And then at some point he was like, okay, well, I guess we do visual novels now. What if we published it as a visual novel? And she was created for the visual novel when he realized that the game had no moe character. She was a character created for the purpose of cuteness itself, which is certainly obvious in her design. She's about 3.5 feet tall, it seems.
Yeah.
Comparing her with other characters. But also, it was a ton of fun getting into her head in that side story, because we don't get a ton of her in the main game, but she has a great relationship with Aoko.
Yeah, like, I initially didn't pick up on that whole, like, angle of, oh, she's supposed to be the cute one, because, like, her main situations in the story are just, like, talking to Sojiro and kind of just making fun of him with kind of a scowl on her face in a way that's like, oh, okay, she's mean, but she does kind of have a sense of liking him to some degree. Or the times that she comes into the student council room and interacts with the others, but then, like, you get her in the Sweethearts costume, and it's like, oh, okay, I see what you're doing here.
Yeah, her in the Sweethearts costume definitely feels like a Fate Go event character, and I'm kind of surprised we haven't gotten one yet. Maybe we will now that the remake's out, but...
Yeah. I mean, listen, it's way more moe to have a tired girl than a girl in an elaborate costume.
Mm-hmm. I do like her casual outfit is really cute.
Yeah, she looks good.
Yeah.
Generally, I like that because the protagonist is like, or the narrator is Aoko out of time. I do like that we get sprites for everyone. It is, coming from Tsukihime and Stay Night, it is nice having the main protagonists have like sprites and facial expressions that aren't just described through text.
Mm-hmm.
I don't feel like this story works without seeing Aoko sprites.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
It's I mean, like, especially there's a thing that Jen mentioned earlier, which is how, like, Aoko is so well conveyed by, like, the presentation, making her very kinetic, right? And I feel like that's especially true for her over other characters, right? Like, she is the one who benefits the most from the way they animate characters in this, because no one else is just as, like, motion heavy as she is, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think if I remember correctly, she has something like 2,000 sprites, which is so many.
Yeah, and I mean, obviously a lot of that is like taking this expression and slapping it on this pose, and but still, it's still a ridiculous number.
Yeah, and it's really neat to like see the way that her situation plays out, because like she ends up talking about how she was not supposed to be in this situation at all. Like it was a situation where Toko, her older sister, was supposed to inherit this situation, but her grandfather more or less pushed Toko out of the picture and decided Aoko would be his focus. And because of that, any semblance of a normal life for Aoko kind of went out the window as she like moved to this ornate mansion and started training with this person who could easily kill her one day. And just watching her like just watching her motivation and how she more or less takes the idea of, okay, I'm going to make good on every single one of my promises, and that's not because I want to do it for other people, but because it's what I need for myself, for the sense of self-worth. Seeing the way that kind of propels her to, like that specific thing is what makes her powerful enough to eventually discover, is it the fifth magic, or is it supposed to be
fifth.
like a...
Yeah.
It's fifth.
Okay. The fifth magic of time, and is enough to make her, in a moment of realization, just push through and, like, do something absolutely astonishing, to the point where even Toko, like, in the middle of this fight, is reacting to it like, what the fuck are you doing? This is going to have... What you are doing right now could endanger everyone. What is happening?
Well, Jennifer, actually, I think you'll find that the fifth magic is not time, because the second magic is time, and the fifth magic's nature is unclear, but it can contain some forms of time travel within its purview.
Okay, so I have tried to avoid being the Type Moon lore person. There were several times when I wrote down notes that was like, it is interesting how generally, like, this game, or the novel that came before it, is kind of the foundation of what is referred to as the Nasuverse. But what is interesting about that, as opposed to, like, the MCU or stuff like that, is that actually very few things take place in the same world. There's a lot of inconsistency between things. And so, like, originally Tsukihime and Stay Night took place in the same world, but then actually, servants can't exist in Tsukihime universe. And, like, even Hollow Ataraxia, which is a direct follow-up to Stay Night, doesn't take place in the same world because it doesn't follow up any of the routes. It is just kind of its own thing. And so it is fun for me, someone who's read a decent amount of Type Moon stuff. It is fun, all of the things that come through that are like, oh, this isn't actually, this is inconsistent with other worlds, and that's fun. So, like, the way Aoko's Magic Crest works, for instance, is very different from how it works in Stay Night. In Stay Night, it is more like you just put energy in and it does a thing. Here, it is more like an FPGA or something you have to, like, program, and then it will do things. Also, it is, in Stay Night, it is something that, like, you transplant since birth because it's a long and painful process. And here it's like, oh yeah, she's been a mage for 2 years. It's fine. Don't worry about it.
Well, they mentioned something was, like, carved into her bones or something, like some sort of crest that means that as long as she doesn't get a fatal wound given enough time, she'll just simply regenerate on her own. But
yeah, I think that is one of the interesting things that is consistent with Stay Night, is that, like, a magic crest is a parasite that will keep its host alive if it can. And that is kind of, like, less the theme here. This game is much less about, like, legacy and history than although it is kind of about it is a little bit about that. But back to the I really enjoyed the discussion of, wait, isn't the true magic kind of time travel, because second magic is travel between dimensions, which means that basically you can travel to different timelines that and you can, like, find one that has the changes that you want, versus, I'm excited for more on what the fifth magic is in 2032 when Mahou 2 comes out.
Yeah, because the bits that the only solid bits we seem to get from like what she does like in that last fight is that she does a Dragon Ball. She does a Dragon Ball style power up where she's just standing in the middle of a field, and suddenly as she's doing that, you're just seeing seasons change around her in rapid succession, like in a little circle around her, as the sky keeps changing between winter, spring, summer, fall, all of that, and once the dust clears, she has effectively borrowed 5 years of Sojiro's past. 10 years of Sojiro's past to send her 10 years into the future. And, like, now we're dealing with a Aoko Elzaki who has been spending 10 years training and is, like, she has the full red head of hair that she has in Tsukihime and Melty Blood and all that.
Her hair looks incredible. Like, it is probably my... I have problems with her sprite. She's wearing like a belly shirt rather than a crappy Hanes t-shirt. But
Yeah.
her red hair is so good. The way that it like glows is just I never got tired of looking at it.
I mean, if you're gonna have problems with how she's portrayed here versus how she's portrayed in Melty Blood and you know, also of course Tsukihime, how about the fact she's not the same fucking person? The personality doesn't match in the slightest.
Well, that's 10 years.
Yeah, and we got her 10 years later. That's what we got. She time traveled for this, and it's still not a match.
Yes, and part of that is that she has like Sojiro's that 10 years of Sojiro's memories like tempering her. Which is
from being fun?
Hmm?
I mean, like, my memory of Aoko mostly from Melty Blood, because she's not in Tsukihime that much, right? She's pretty lighthearted.
Well, the thing is, like, it's the 10 years Aoko we get in this is also like the 10 years she's been ruminating on Sojiro's death, and like who knows what other things were going on, just because, like, I imagine that's a time from when she probably didn't retain the land that she currently has.
Well,
like,
no, now you're getting into time travel theory, because are you assuming that this is she time traveled to the current version, or did she time travel to the version that will be?
Great
because
question. I think I would say she is consistent with the Tsukihime portrayal of her. I haven't seen a ton of her in Melty Blood. But in Tsukihime, she really just kind of shows up and is not super lighthearted, as far as I remember. The thing that I really remember is Eclipse, which is the like final after you've cleared all 5 routes bit of Tsukihime, and she's just kind of showing up and is like, and Shiro, Shiki is like, yeah, I'm gonna die soon, and she's like, yeah, you sure are. But you kind of made the best of your time.
Yeah, like it's interesting the way that Sojiro's personality affects her in that situation, the way that her personality is put onto Sojiro a little bit. Like, they have that bit where they finally beat Toko and they have her in a corner, and Sojiro, the person who has been averse to killing the entire time before, is just like, no, you're not going to do it, I'm going to be the one that does it, and just closes in totally ready to kill Toko.
There are 2 things that Nasu loves. There are many things that Nasu loves doing. One of them is having a mage say, I'm going to kill someone, and then deciding not to. And I am begging Nasu to let a mage kill someone once. Please.
Well, Toko technically killed someone once when she sliced Sojiro in half.
Okay, a mage who's not a major antagonist.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Yeah. The other one that came up in this game was Nasu loves to have a character say, well, as long as two people are trying to kill each other, there's no sin there.
What he needs to realize is as long as one person is trying to kill another, there's no sin there. It's okay. Just you need to check some. We need to get Aoko on that Tumblr grind. Like murder is okay.
I think so. The final confrontation with Toko. I wish that the thing that bothered me the most there, and this is what I kind of alluded to before, is like I kind of rolled my eyes when Sojiro punched the werewolf so good that it fell over. Yeah. And then was like, but Aoko still gets a final confrontation with Toko and gets to be cool as hell. But I don't even mind so much Sojiro getting to show up and say, "Hey, don't kill her." I wish that the game had framed that less as the morally correct and good option. Mm-hmm. That is the part, like, I like the bit where Aoko's like, oh, wait, 10 years of Sojiro's memories are preventing me from doing this. Oh, okay. That part's good. I wish that he wasn't framed as, like, her savior. That part is a little exhausting to me.
Yeah, like, it comes through several parts where he more or less... He has a really odd idea about how he sees Aoko, in that, like... At first, he thinks it's okay if, like, she is the one to kill him, because he's just making peace with that idea and being like, well, I don't want to be killed by anything else in the city, but if you're going to do it, I guess it's fine. But later on, he sees it as kind of like his duty to... As soon as he finds out from Alice that Aoko has never killed anyone before, he sees it kind of as his duty to prevent that from ever happening.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I think the ending in general reveals a thing that's just generally true about Nasu, which is that when it comes down to, like, wrapping things up, he's kind of basic, which is okay, but, you know.
Yeah, and that is partially why I say this definitely feels like the first of 3 games. Mm-hmm. There's a lot more for these characters. There's a lot more room for these characters to develop and grow. And I look forward to reading that again whenever that comes out. Fingers crossed. LB7, the final part of, or maybe final, maybe second to last part of Arc 2 of Fate Grand Order just released in Japan. So fingers crossed Nasu is wrapping up his involvement with that and can get back to writing good visual novels, like proper ones that aren't gacha games.
Obviously, it's going to be adaptation. It's going to be a lot of work no matter what the answer to this is. I'm not trying to suggest otherwise. But do you think that this is, like, plot-wise, a third of the book he originally wrote? Or is this the book he originally wrote and he's going to have to write 2 new ones? In other words, did he take what he originally wrote and split it into 3 parts?
That's an excellent question. I would have to look that up. My guess is that that original book wasn't very good.
No, of course.
This is part of the thing. I don't think that this is the entirety of what he originally wrote, because the ending in some way, like, it gives... At the end, I am not sitting here thinking, damn, I really need to see where Aoko and Alice go. Is like, I would like to. I am interested in where they end up from here, but I have a pretty good idea of what kind of path they're headed on. It's really like Sojiro, I'm like, okay, what's your whole deal? How are you going to complicate things? Like,
when are you going to tragically die to motivate someone?
Yeah. And yeah, so I would believe that this is like half of what he originally wrote, or even like 2/3. But or I would also believe equally that like, oh yeah, a lot of that book was just like lore and not much plot, and
Sure.
and so like a lot of what actually happens in this game is him writing new stuff.
Just in order to, of course, further convince our listener, Kinoko Nasu, to go with the direction I'm suggesting. Remember, fridging is bad unless it's men.
There's some...
There's
God.
oh, sorry.
I was gonna be like, there is this whole thing that just gets revealed in the side chapter where there's a character within the church that you meet for a little bit, Eri
Jen
Mizuka.
tweeted her surprise about this.
Well, the degree to which he's been involved in the Aozaki family is fucking wild, and that's just a thing that's in the sides content where, like, first off, when he gets introduced, the text goes out of its way to talk about how fuckable he is. Like, they talk about his very moist lips and things like that.
They do that.
And you kind of just get the sense that, okay, he clearly, like, has a lot of shit going on in terms of, like, the way that he engages Sojiro just to, like, both poke him as a fascinating object and to, like, get his own desires across in terms of, like, okay, I'm just gonna send him what will probably be his death, but it's what he wants, so whatever.
Let me end this statement for you, though, Jen. Let me predict your ending here, based on your tweet. But I didn't expect that the creepy, like, emotionless priest in a Nasu story would be evil.
Well, it's the bit where, like, he was the one who more or less killed the Aozaki, he's the one who killed the Aozaki sister's grandpa, because at one point he was also a mage under, his tutelage, and Eri just had a moment where he was like, well, if I can kill him, like, now's as good as chance as any, and just does it. And,
can I introduce you to a wonderful man named Kotomine Kirei?
Also, can I introduce you to her grandfather, who we meet as, like, a spirit, and is a miserable little asshole.
Oh, yeah.
Of course you're gonna kill him if you
sucks.
get the chance.
to be fair, he's also the one that more or less preserves, Aoko and, Sojiro's relationship, so...
No, she was never gonna pull the trigger on her own.
Yeah, but that's the point. Like, they bring him over to the grandfather to be like, okay, you do it. And the grandpa's just like, no, fuck you, you do it.
Right, I mean, that's the thing, though, right? It's not him being a good dude. He doesn't do it because he doesn't think it should be done. He does it because he calls you to take a full day train and walk up a mountain so he can say to your face, do it yourself, and then send you home. It fucking sucks.
I guess that's a good point. Yeah. A lot of characters who are just, like, relatively sometimes pleasant to be around, but then are just complete assholes when given the chance. But, yeah.
We really need to have Jen play more Nasu stuff.
I'm planning on, like, this is the thing that made me, like, immediately after we record this, I'm already planning on starting, like, Garden of Sinners, because I basically heard that Toko is also a major part of that, and it sounds interesting to see this alternate thing of, like, okay, Shiki butt girl. It's like, okay, I'm on board.
Yeah, I'm very excited for Karno Kyokai. Because yeah, it is in kind of a similar way as this game is all of or underpins a lot of the Nasu lore. Karno Kyokai is the first, like, officially released thing that exists in that world, or is the first officially released popular thing that exists in that world. We did read a short story called Notes in the Dojin Angel Voice, which is fascinating because it is, it is like it includes important lore for future things. But Karno Kyokai includes Aoko. I think it more includes Toko. I don't think that Aoko's a super big part of it, but also, Girl Shiki, who I'm very excited to meet.
Mm-hmm.
Should really put her in Melty Blood. The new one, obviously. I think she was in the old one, right?
Toko? She's not she's not in the original one.
She's not?
No.
Huh. I guess I had that in my head, but
I think the original
probably
one is...
probably what it was is because at the time I saw there were two Shikis and I didn't know anything about Tsukihime, and I just sort of was like, oh, it must be the one from the other thing. It's like, no, it's because they're two Shikis. Never mind, it's a whole thing.
This is a big and confusing series sometimes, but I'm excited to dive into more of it because, like, this game more or less made me realize that Nasu, when it comes down to it, he can write incredibly compelling characters and just fights and even just really simple interactions with these characters. Like, all the stuff about the takeout or the bits where... Oh, I love the bit where they assume that Sojiro has been stashing all this money that he'll be able to use whenever, and Alice did a bad thing and just ordered a bunch of takeout at once.
Yeah.
Like, when he gets moments like that, he's an incredible writer, I think.
Yeah, I think Fate Stay Night, if you don't like... There's one sex scene that I really miss from the like Realta Nua version, but mostly the Realta Nua version is fine and worth playing. But I think this game is a really interesting combination of Tsukihime, which has very low stakes, and especially the Far Side is really about one house, and like the stakes are mostly kind of related to those 4 people, 5, I guess, if you include other Shiki. And then this game, and Stay Night, which is way better about having downtime. Like, Tsukihime is kind of frantic. As soon as stuff starts happening, there's not much time when it's not happening. And so I really appreciate the combination of lower stakes and what Nasu gets to later and stuff is like having great characterization through just quiet moments.
Yeah. Like, they even found quiet moments after the fact for Lou Beowulf, who initially was just kind of just a nothing character, but like when you find out more about him, I don't know, he's charming in a way. Like, at least as charming as a kid who has no sense of morality and is also ageless can be.
I was grumpy at the translation for using he to refer to him after there's a line that literally says he's neither male nor female. But then I checked the Japanese and it uses kare. And so I was like, okay, yeah, that's just in the original. That's not something I can get grumpy at the translation for.
Yeah, the story is basically just like him being an ageless, genderless, and then after that, a boy. But yeah, his initial thing is just like a very classic sort of sicko's character who is the small boy who's like, oh, can I just eat her and spread her entrails all around? I bet that would be so cool. And like, the more you find out about him, like, the more you just find out that he was born into an impossible position, being like one of the rare werewolves that was had the long lost golden mane that everyone kind of associates with holiness in a sense. And when he turned out not to age and not to be the thing everyone was hoping for, they kind of just tossed him to the side and thought, whatever, kind of hate this guy. And then Toko appears and gives him a new purpose. But
yeah,
it makes it very clear that even though he has this pact with her, he is willing to just do whatever he wants. And if he is sufficiently bored, he'll just fucking kill everyone and peace out.
Bao's origin touches on one of my favorite parts of Nasuverse lore, which is that like celestial beings have wills, and sapience, or I guess sapience is probably the wrong word, but like yeah, have a desire, because like oh yeah, he was born by like a little bit of the Earth's creativity, and like desire to create leaking out and dropping into our world, which is just yeah, great, perfect.
Mm-hmm.
And it's
Yeah.
yeah.
And it's why I don't really mind that much the way that his defeat to Sojiro goes, because, like, he just has no sense of the world around him, other than, like, oh, I am finding foods that I like that are good, or things like that. And he is basically introduced to the concept of death, even though he is deathless, by Sojiro just breaking his own limbs to punch this werewolf in various places. And even though he is respawning, even though Beowulf is respawning, the experience is traumatizing enough to be like, what the fuck? What the fuck is this? I do not like how death feels. I'm not going to do this anymore. I am out.
Yeah, and the side story we get, that is Toko and Bayo, says like yeah, demonstrates that after that he spends more time in human form, which is like oh yeah, he understands the concept of death now, which makes him more human.
It's just listen, it's the Tono blood running through Sojiro's veins, you know? Just can't win against it.
It was incredibly funny when the murder mystery thing happened too, and it just went into detail about how Beowulf just loves getting head pats from Sojiro now.
Yeah.
And how he turned into a stuffed animal when he died.
Sojiro
Yeah.
relatively low on my list of characters I would accept head pats from in this game.
I feel like he'd be like... the thing is, I wouldn't accept head pats from most people because I find them deeply condescending, and I feel like Sojiro would make it not condescending.
I would not mind being condescended to by Toko, is the thing.
I mean, I also just don't like being touched in general. So, you know. I no longer like writhe like a snake when someone does it unexpectedly, but you know, we're working on it, right?
All that just really brings me back to how weird it is that the priest is the only one that is described in any sexual way, especially when, like, there's...
Jen?
Yeah?
Did you pay attention to any time they were talking about Toko?
I guess that's right, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. There, even Sojiro finds himself doing the whole hubba hubba thing after meeting her in, like, her tights and all that. But,
I will say one of the biggest bummers about this game is that the character designs. So the character designs are not Takeuchi, who's the like main character designer for Type Moon. It is Koyama Hirokazu, and part of what I love, and this is less true about the remake designs, part of what I love about original Tsukihime is that, like, Arcoid is just wearing a big frumpy sweater and an incredibly, like, frumpy skirt, and I love her for it. The cloth in this is, like, so much more form-fitting, in a way that is, like, yeah, it's not an H game. Sure feels like Eroge character designs, though.
yeah, that said, I really want Aoko's casual outfit, like the one where she has that big sweater on with like that whole look with the necklace. That I want to steal that look.
Yeah,
it's
a good look. Yeah, Aoko I'm looking at some Aoko expressions and I'm just like, damn, she has the best expressions.
Yeah, I think I like I think I like the outfits in this, but it helps that I haven't had the comparison, right? When you see Arquid in her like original outfit, and you see like, and now she's in a mini skirt, you're like, that's not who that character is. You did a bad job.
Mm-hmm.
So, meh.
Yeah, if you want to see some really weird character differences, like you should look up some of the other art of Toko and other like Fate stuff where she just looks like an entirely different character sometimes. Like I think one of the 3D Fate games, like Extra or Extella, like at some point she appears and she has completely white hair and it's cut in a short crop, and it's bizarre.
Yeah, Extra has both Aoko and Toko, and they are your like level up your skills, and I don't remember what the other one does, but and they hate each other there too. It is very funny now. Like that was my first exposure to both of those characters, and then I read Tsukihime and I was like, Aoko? Oh, okay. And hadn't gotten Toko until this game, but yeah, it is funny that their character designs change so much.
Is there anything else we want to touch on? Like, I guess we could get into some of the world deploy stuff, though that's mostly just an explanation thing. And that part was the part that really made me want to play the sequel immediately, because there's a bit where Alice was like, yeah, I've only kind of showed you 2 of my 3 big ploys. I'm saving the next one for the sequel. Look forward to it.
Yeah, I wish that the world of ploys stuff, I wish that there were bad ends or like proper like CL Sensei's lessons or Tiger Dojos in the murder mystery one, because there are bad ends, and that is the one that is the most like, oh yeah, if you got a bad end, it would be useful to have someone step in and say, here's what you did wrong.
Yeah. True.
And I did enjoy Wonderful World of Ploys a whole lot. I love the like difference in art style. And yeah, Alice beating up Robin was fun.
The part where she takes the archive menu and beats Robin over the head with it is very good.
Chef Alice is just an incredible outfit. But yeah, I wish that had been integrated into the game. Or certainly I'm fine with it. I largely like the side story bits because it feels like, even though I read them basically when they unlocked, they feel like bits and pieces that wouldn't work if they were just interludes in the main narrative. Because the main narrative just kind of like, yeah, you can make your way through that, and none of the side stuff is like essential, but it's a lot of like fun side stories that it's fun to see. And Wonderful World of Ploys has some incredible art. And also I liked the explanations of, I think the stuff around familiars is like, yes, I've read a Nasu work before, where he has gone into what familiars are and how they work. But the stuff around Alice explaining her ploys and like what it takes to make them, it was a lot of fun.
Mm-hmm.
There's also, and I know that y'all haven't played Stay Night, so I will keep this brief. There's some fun stuff around Aoko's motivation and how it's framed. Yeah, like Aoko, Shiki is a very thin character. I think that there are bits and pieces there that you can seize onto and read more fully, but in general, Shiki kind of stays out of the way a lot. Shiro is a very opinionated character. Stay Night is, in the way that Tsukihime is a lot about the girls that you interact with, Stay Night is a lot about Shiro himself and what he does. And how his like neuroses or his history impacts him and kind of makes him self-destructive. And so it was fun seeing a character, Aoko, who at times is self-destructive, but with a very selfish desire. Shiro kind of lives his life for everyone else, and Aoko lives her life for herself and no one else. And sometimes that means that they do similar things. Sometimes they go off to a battle that they know they can't win. But yeah, it is fun seeing Aoko be really selfish and being like, no, I'm living life for myself, and what that means is I am going to balance like schoolwork, living a normal high school girl life, and magic. And also that means I'm going to go fight my sister even though I know I have no chance. Yeah, that's what that, or seeing like not thematic retreads so much as different takes on some similar themes was a lot of fun.
And I feel like you get a little bit of the other side of Shiro and more of Shiki kind of reflected in a less toxic way in Sojiro, in the times where you get to play from his perspective.
Yes. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of, yeah, I'm still, he's the character that I'm most curious about because, or one of the things that I like about Chapter 13 is that it and it might be 12 actually that does this, but it reframes him as, oh, a lot of the, like, certainly sometimes he is legitimately just like bewildered and kind of like confused, but a lot of the time he's playing that role, and he actually knows exactly what's going on and is like blending in, is camouflaging himself, which does, I'm excited to see how that's played going forward, because it's gonna be fun seeing him now that the game has or yeah, the narrative has kind of said that out loud. It is going to be fun seeing how it plays with that.
Though I feel like he deploys that less than, like, it's saying that, I feel like more often than not, though, he is genuinely clueless. It's just that there are strategic times where he deploys it.
Yeah, for sure. It is the kind of thing for me that is like, yeah, I did not have time to reread this entire thing, so like obviously but it is the kind of thing that is like, now that it has been said out loud, I hope that the distinction between those two is made more clear going forward, even if the other characters don't know. The narrative can kind of wink at the reader.
Should we head on to emails?
Yeah, that sounds like a good idea. This one went on a little bit longer than usual, but I feel like that's fine because we just had a whole lot to say.
It was gonna happen.
Listen, we regularly do. Okay, part of the reason that we regularly do 5-hour podcasts is that we'll spend 2 hours talking about like The Handmaiden, which, hey, that film rules. Go watch that. But also our game discussions, our close reading of Type Moon Works, our close reading wade through Type Moon Works is regularly like 3 to 4 hours. So it makes sense. This is short. This is a short episode.
Yeah, and even now there's parts that I'm just thinking of, or realizing like, oh shit, Toko's glasses are totally the glasses that Shiki gets later.
Yeah,
but,
yeah. Sorry, now that you brought that up, I can't, like, it's so fun, because that moment was like, oh right, Toko just had those glasses laying around. Of course she did, because she needs them.
Yeah, like, there's just so much here, and it's so fun to talk about, but yeah, it's probably best to go to questions now. If you're listening to this now and you want to send us questions about this later, you totally can. You just send them to emails@scanlinemedia.com, and we're always happy to get questions. Let's see. I'll need to go ahead and pull them up here.
I can read the first question.
Okay.
This one comes in from Lauren. Playing Mihoyo so soon after Tsukihime is basically looking at 12, or 22, years of Type Moon development in the span of a few months. Are there any themes or formal moves that you felt like they had in common? Was there any Tsukihime hiding in Mihoyo to you, or maybe vice versa? And Fen, obviously, less than that for you, but even so, this is a big jump from where you're at with Type Moon Archive.
Yeah,
So.
I think I've talked about some things, like Ciel's whole bit in her route, or one of them, is Ciel's route really lets her down. But one of my favorite bits about that is her fight with Shiki, where she is like, "No, you have to mean to kill me, so that so that I can give up at the end." But I love the bit of that being like basically as long as two people are on the same page in terms of what's happening, it's fine. Which is both her somewhat unique perspective, but is also just like Nasu loves coming back to this. I think it comes up at some point in Stay Night, and this is Aoko says this, I think, to maybe it's Alice and Aoko talking, but Alice, yes, about killing Sojiro. Aoko basically brings this up to say, well, I can't kill Sojiro without him knowing what's going on. Which is just is a fun thing that he keeps coming back to. I think that the perspective not being a first person narrative really changes a lot about how it functions, because Stay Night has interludes, and Tsukihime never leaves Shiki's perspective, except when it does, but via dreams. But it is interesting. It is interesting seeing Nasu in a very different writing style. I think that there are thematic things that come back, but largely it's partially this is also just the translation is way better. But it feels more well written.
Mm-hmm.
Oh yeah, just having played Tsukihime before this, it's very much night and day, to the point where my initial thing was like, okay, I'm interested in more Fate now, but I might have to grit my teeth through a lot of bad writing or whatever. But playing this, it's like, damn, I really want to read the rest of the stuff this person wrote, because it's super interesting to me now. And it is really funny going from Tsukihime to this also, because it's almost like we're doing the same thing Aoko did, where she just stands in a spot and skips 10 years of content.
Right. I will also say that the Nasu gave an interview, and I haven't read the entire thing because I think it includes the Holodiraxia spoilers, which we're going to get to at some point soon, but where he talks about his writing of strong female characters, and how this didn't come up in one of the emails, did it? No. Okay.
Let's see. Yeah.
Right, about his writing of strong female characters, and how kind of he tended to write physically strong, emotionally weak women. This is certainly true of basically all of the women in Tsukihime. Completely blanked on the name there for a sec. But especially Arcoid being kind of that archetypically. I would say that especially Saber and Sakura, to a slightly lesser extent Rin in Unlimited Blade Works for sure. Those are people with a lot of power who don't have the mental fortitude to make the decisions, and so the hero comes along and helps them. And so it is very refreshing to get Aoko being stubborn and like I think the bit with Sojiro at the end stopping her from killing Aoko, I am grumpy about. But aside from that, basically, and yeah, I think that there are ways that could have been better done, I guess is what I should say. But aside from that, it very much feels like both her and Alice are written way like Nasu tends to write better female characters than most male writers, especially in eroge, but it is refreshing seeing characters who are both have a lot of power and also like emotionally resilient.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think it's vital that there's that conversation Sojiro has in the church where he comes to realize, like, it's not him so much coming in and fixing Aoko's life. It's him, like, coming to terms with the fact that he's meeting someone who's very, like, has a surprising depth of emotional maturity and, like, an incredible resolve to do whatever she can do. And he is constantly mentioning throughout various parts that he's not afraid of Aoko dying and is not worried about Aoko. And that's initially treated like it could be a situation where he's just being a little careless around her, but the truth is that he just sees her and knows that she's going to be all right. That she has found this sense of inner drive that will take her anywhere she wants to be. And he ends up feeling jealous about that in a way. That's kind of heartwarming.
Yeah. I was thinking about, like, the comparison we made earlier about between this and Tsukihime about being games about, living in a house with other people, basically, right? And I think one thing, this is a difference, not a similarity. I'm sorry, I'm riffing on your email. I'm not ignoring the question. People talk about Nasu a lot in relation to Type Moon, and of course I do think he's probably, like, at least of the work that we tend to pay attention to, he's like the biggest influence. But, you mentioned the name earlier of Takashi Takeuchi, who's the artist of a lot of Type Moon works, and not on this one, right? And I feel like there are, like, kind of cute ways to notice his absence, right? Like, let me tell you, if he was the artist on this game, I bet you $100 that Alice would have had a stay-in maid.
Oh.
It would have happened. But instead, he was merely planning and a producer, which is like the least he's been involved with any of their visual novels. And so, no maid this time.
Well, as far as I know, that is the least he's been involved with, like, any of their projects. Like, Type Moon was, at the beginning, just Nasu and Takeuchi. And
yeah, I just don't want to talk beyond my knowledge.
yeah. And, like, Takeuchi is still intimately involved in Fate Go, and yeah, it is interesting how little involvement he had in this project.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I can go ahead and tackle the next question here from Emrys. Hi, Jen, Six, and Fen. I want to thank you for bringing this game to my attention. I probably would have missed it before it's released if you haven't decided to cover it. This quickly became my favorite VN. One thing I really liked was the fluid point of view of this game. Shifting perspectives between Aoko and Sojiro fairly often, and without fanfare, was neat and different from any other VNs I've played. So my question is, if you could introduce an ongoing second point of view character to an existing game, what game and what character would you choose? Also, this game just looks amazing, and it is nice to have a Type Moon game that is not trapped by the eroge genre requirements.
Yeah, we've noted it several times, but the fact that no one has to try and pretend to be horny really helps. It really helps a lot.
I will say that from what I've read some eroge, and from what I've heard from other people, Nasu's penchant for having protagonists that are extremely horny at all times is not unique, but rarer. I almost brought another thing for the beginning of the podcast, but didn't get far enough in that I wanted to talk about it. But it is, yeah, I think eroge it is more a Nasu problem than it is the genre of eroge. But that said, it also became one of my favorite VNs. I think that ending feeling like it's leaving room for more stopped it from being the top. But in answer to the question though, I would add Rin to Stay Night.
Yeah.
She is,
Yeah.
especially to fix Unlimited Blade Works, she is barely a character and never talks to Shiro. I mean, she does, but it's far less than the other two routes. It would be really fun getting her perspective more consistently than the couple of interludes that she gets.
I played a little of the game, and I have watched the entire anime, which don't just play the game. It's the way to do this. The writing's much better in the game, but it does mean I have some perspective on the story, and I would like Shiro so much more if instead of playing as him, he was this like pathetic idiot I was having to clean up after.
The immediate game that jumped to my mind is a thing that, like, it would completely destroy the reveals if it happened, but that's just always how I am when I play certain stories like this. Like, well, my idea is that, like, it'd be really cool to see 999 from Zero's perspective, just given what you find out about Zero by the end of the game. And of course, that would spoil everything, but if you just included that as like a thing that happened like after the fact, and you just got to, I don't know, see what was happening from their perspective, that'd be cool.
Mm-hmm.
But in terms of things that are like, I guess it would have been nice to have a kindred spirit situation. Wait, no. Kindred Spirits bounces through perspectives a bunch. I'm sorry, I don't have a good answer for this, other than it'd be real cool to play, like, mystery VNs and see the perspective of the characters causing the mystery in the first place.
I'm trying to come up with a good answer, which is like, I feel like I should be good at this, but I have such a nightmare, like, always making jokes brain, that I'm like, oh man, I wish I could play Dota 2 as a different character, just because my brain is like this, and I'm sorry. I genuinely am sorry.
I will say real quick, I would love to play Grand Order from other perspectives there. They've gotten better at characterizing the main character, but damn if they are barely a character for most of Arc 1, and they're still lightly charactered in Arc 2, although they get a little bit more. It'd be fun to like play from MASH or from the like Command Center team, like see more stuff out from this is also just me saying, please God, give me a character who's not a self-insert.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I was gonna say earlier, once you brought up MASH, like, it would be so cool if you could play as her. Like, it's a fascinating idea to think about what is it like for the people who turned into servants, especially when they were just like a straight up lab scientist before all of that happened. Like,
yeah,
where does she go when she's not doing this stuff?
Mm-hmm. This is also, I would love to play Arknights from Kaltzit's perspective. For anyone who doesn't know, and this is like lore stuff that is it's barely a spoiler. She is an immortal cat girl who's been around for thousands of years, and I really just want to see her being miserable. She is she is a kind of, what's the word I'm searching for, not discontented, but anyway, she's incredible, and it would be really fun seeing. I think, right, there are a couple of times where you get stuff more from her perspective, but that would, if it was an ongoing thing, that would be a lot of fun.
Yeah.
The only thing, this is a weird answer, but in the game Gunpoint. If anyone remembers that game rules.
Great game.
Oh, yeah.
So late in the game, you find out that most of the major incidents have been caused by another agent who like kind of has your job, but he's a shithead. And I would love to see some of that.
Mm-hmm.
Though, I mean, it would be really hard to give up playing as Conway because Conway's such a moron. It's fantastic. The dialogue in that game is so good, because there's so many, like, you get a message from like the villain who's like, I see you foiled my plot, and one of your options is like, wait, there was a plot? Oh shit. Like, he's just an idiot, and it's very fun. So it would be hard to play that game as someone who was smart. Be very different.
And then we have one more question.
Fen, would you be willing to read it so everyone's read one?
Oh, sure. Let's see where. Okay. Oh, hey. Shoutouts to both Lauren and Blute, who are fans of Moon Archive, and we chat in a server. Anyway, hey all. This is just a quick one that came up in a conversation some of us had in the Discord server. Given that Mahoutsukai was announced and originally released around the same time as the original announcement for Tsukihime Remake, Mahoutsukai is supposed to be the first part of a trilogy, and now the first part of Tsukihime Remake is finally out. Which series are you most excited for more of? Personally, as much as I adored Tsukihime and am excited for either a fan or official translation of the remake, that one mostly feels like a completed story that lives 20-ish years in my memory. Well, I wanted to know what else happens in Aoko and or Toko's lives between now and where we see them in later Type Moon works. Maybe my opinion changes once I can actually play the remake. Love what you all do, and I can't wait to get to Karno Kyokai with Fate Moon Archive Blue. Yeah, I am very excited for the Tsukihime remake. And I am glad that the second part is coming out, but I am also very excited that Nasu has said that he's going to move on to, after Red Garden comes out, that he is going to move back to writing Mahoutsukai too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Jen dropped this question, showed us this question because we get to read these in advance. And even then I failed to answer the last one, so sorry. But so this question has been I've known about this for what, like 8 hours or something for a while. No, no, way more than 8 hours. I'm terrible at math. God, like 20 hours. Anyway, and I've spent about that whole time going back and forth on whether I'm willing to say that I hated Tsukihime or just intensely disliked it. I will bet that the remake is gonna do a lot. Like, if I ever get to play it, will do a lot to fix a lot of the problems I have with Tsukihime. But if you ask me right now, I don't want to hear more from the rapists. I'm good. I don't want to hear from Shiki ever again. There's no question to me. There's no contest. I liked this game, and I didn't like Tsukihime, and I didn't like its characters very much, mostly. So, I don't know. For me, it's open and shut.
Yeah, first I will point out that there does seem to be a fan translation of the first half of Tsukihime that's Tsukihime remake that's available. I haven't actually looked for it myself, but I have seen clips and bits and pieces posted from other folks who were just appear to be playing it with a full English translation. So
it's not done yet. They have
okay.
It's playable, and there are routes that are done, but they haven't finished sales yet.
I believe Arcoid's route is done, and Ciel's is still in progress.
Okay, yeah. As for which one I'm looking forward to more, it's a situation where I do think that once I eventually get to the remake, just off the top of my head, I'm pretty sure they have likely made it so Shiki is no longer a rapist. So, in that regard, I'm really interested in seeing more Tsukihime, but I am also just constantly thinking, what the fuck is Alice's third ploy? I need to know her third ploy. So, I am much more excited for the next part of Mahoyo.
I hope she never uses it.
Yeah, that's a third game reveal. The second one is just what Sejiro's whole deal is. I think I am more like curious about the Far Side remake is called The Other Side of Red Garden. I am more curious about what Red Garden looks like. Like I could not write a Mahoyo 2. Part of that is just I'm not a very good writer. But I know what that game is going to be about roughly. Probably continuing a lot of the themes from this one. I am so curious how you take the Far Side of Tsukihime and turn that into something that doesn't have that not only doesn't have sex, but based on like modern Type Moon stuff, doesn't have like references to it or any. Yeah, I guess I haven't played the remake, the a piece of Blue Glass Moon, but it current Type Moon is a very different thing than when it was just Nasu and Takeuchi working on Tsukihime original.
Yeah. I mean, it's possible there are people who are going to listen to this who haven't listened to our Tsukihime episode, and so, you know, I'll won't name names, but like there are roots that'll be in that remake that it's like, yeah, you'd have to do a lot of changes to not make this about sexual abuse, huh?
Yeah. Uh-huh.
Yeah.
And I think the original doesn't always handle that very well, but for me at least, it is certainly interesting, or the ideas that it's playing with are interesting and I think interesting to explore. And so, like, what does a remake that doesn't get to play with those ideas look like? It's going to be, yeah.
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 I'm really curious about what Akiha is like in the second half. Like, what is she like when she doesn't have that really uncomfortable brother complex situation going on? Because, like, she was maybe my favorite character in the game until that shit popped up and, like, turned into a sex scene that I could not skip because vital plot shit was happening in between the sex parts.
It is truly astonishing that in the middle of that sex scene they pause to have a very important conversation and then continue.
I am very worried that you are setting yourself up and that'll be like, I mean, there's no sex. We're not getting rid of the sister complex thing, though. That's just anime.
You're probably right. It's because that's just such a core part of her character once you find out about it that, damn it.
Yeah, unfortunately. Yeah, so I think I would say I'm more excited like narratively for what Mahoyo 2 does, and I am more curious like structurally and from a production standpoint what Tsukihime, the Other Side of the Red Garden, looks like. And I am very excited. This was not part of the question, but I am very excited for Fate Extra Record because I like Extra a whole lot, and I would love a revised version of that looks better and plays better.
Yeah, I think right now what I'm most excited about is playing Fate Stay Night. I want to do that. That sounds fun.
It's largely a good time.
Boy, anyone talk you about anything Nasu's made?
I am simply like not a shonen person, or like, you know, battle shonen person. So Unlimited Blade Works doesn't really do it for me. But both Fate and what is the Heaven's Feel are very, very good. And Unlimited Blade Works has its moments, but
it's a fun thing because like I know you're not really talking about the fight, you're talking about thematic context, right? But just I'm torn on whether or not I like fights in visual novels, because on the one hand, like it's obviously just a bad way to represent, you know, a fight, a physical fight between people. Just the medium is not very good at it. But I've been reading visual novels since I was like 15. And I just have such intense nostalgia for like sprites wiggling as clanging sounds ring out. It just makes me happy. So I don't know.
Did you like the bits in this game where Sojiro starts getting choked by the collar and his sprite just starts shaking
so good.
violently?
Yeah, I think you also mentioned it earlier, Jen, but I popped off for the hot pot of the fork and chopsticks just like dueling for food.
Yeah, it's really good.
It was like really high production value, but still low enough that you could pop off for it.
Yeah. Yeah, I am mixed on fights. Part of the reason that I'm so down on Limbo Blade Works is that it is like truly a route written for an anime because there are so many fights. But yeah, the fights in this were like, okay, yeah, with these production values, I don't mind. I'll take more of these, sure. Anyway.
Yeah. Thank you, everyone, for your questions.
Yeah.
If you want to send more, emails at scanlandmedia.com. You can really write us about basically anything.
Yep. Pretty much, even if it's about a visual novel we've never played, we'll try and answer it.
Or not a visual novel. Jen,
Yeah,
what do you think? What do you think about the Hardy's Carl's Jr. divide?
Are they the same? Aren't they the same restaurant?
They are, but you know, on the East Coast it's Hardee's, and the West Coast is Carl's Jr.
Personally, as someone on the East Coast, I kind of wish we had the name Carl's Jr. because it's more, I don't know, it's more flavorful, but it's whatever.
You know, it isn't flavorful as their fucking food. Eat shit Hardee's or Carl's Jr. You know, I wish you two would like separate and have a civil war, because maybe in like the escalation, one of you would learn how to make a fucking burger I could eat. You useless assholes.
Speaking of unexpected combat, well, it's not
what is this transition? Let's hear it. Let's hear it, John.
Okay, speaking of unexpected combats, I was gonna say that it wasn't gonna work as a transition, but I was gonna say the game we're covering in January is Metal Gear Solid.
Yes, we're going to be playing Metal Gear Solid 1 for the PlayStation. If you are not using a physical disc, if you're playing some other means, I highly encourage you to seek out Metal Gear Solid Integral, which only came out in Japan, and so you'd have to mod your console, but does include a full English translation and just has extra features. So you should probably just play that version.
But yeah, aside from that, I just want to say thank you so much, Fen, for joining us for this. It's discussing this has been an absolute blast, and
thank you so much for having me. It has been a lot of fun. And Ben keeps joking that this is podcast NTR, but I am so happy that I got to cover this game.
I mean, listen, some people like that shit, you know? That's why it's a thing. Maybe you're discovering something about yourself.
Oh, no, I know that NTR is the best Yuri.
But yeah, where can people find you online, by the way?
You can find me, type fenic.moe into an address bar. That'll get you to, I think, my co-host. That'll point you to whatever the current social media that I'm using right now is. You can find my podcast at moonarchive.art, MOON, archive.art. We have some other like short URLs for like our schedule and stuff, but that'll get you to the show page, which I think has links to those things. Yeah, I think that's it. Email questions for our future Mahoyo episode to cryingrules@gmail.com, I guess. If you have any of those, we'll get to it.
Schedule that email to send in 2 years.
Yeah, we'll get to those in a couple of years when we finally get there.
Yeah, as for us, like, I think even when we made the switch over to Patreon, we were still plugging, but should we still do that, since we're...
I mean, we can just do, like, where to find us, because, listen, even if you're following us, thank you so much for your support. Means a lot to us. And hey, maybe if you're supporting us, you have thoughts about the work we do, and in that case, you might want to find us. So
that's a good point. Yeah, you can find me on Twitter at JBU3 and co-host at Jen-and-Aster. Yeah, those are the two main places I am. I revived my Mastodon account for like a few days before finding out a bunch of places were just unfederating from the main feed, so
yeah,
that's kind of fallen by the wayside for me, but yeah.
You can find me on Twitter at Sixdetmar, Sixdettmar. I'm not going to say most, but a lot of places, if you try that, you'll find me. So, you want to try other places. If you're like, I don't want to use Twitter, that's fine. You can probably find me elsewhere. Twitter is the place because it seems like it's where the most people are still. And also, I have open DMs there. So anything you want to talk to us about the show or the work we do, just, DM away. That's why it's there.
Yeah, that's going to do it for us. Until next time.
Slow save.
Oh! Alright, I see what... You're throwing us a curveball there. But yeah, have a good one, everyone.
Peace.
Goodbye.